World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
This is so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Round 2 of the HyperX Open Series is upon us here at World Pro Racing, and you're very welcome to join us as we head to Silverstone for 2 races. First, a 30-minute sprint, and then of course the hour-long feature race, both needing pit stops and both have a requirement for fuel. Welcome along then to World Pro Racing, and if you're watching us on ESTV, Motorsport TV, TVM Sport, welcome along, and of course a big shout out to everyone watching on Twitch and YouTube. It's great to have you along here, and of course a huge shout out to our sponsor of the Open Series in HyperX, where our top 3 drivers at the end of tonight will all be in line to receive some very special prizes. And I'm honoured to be joined by the ever-present Nicholas Hillebrand. Nico, great to have you along with us once again. And the HyperX Open Series, we saw great racing at Monza last time around. I'm looking for more of the same.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be absolutely fantastic here, and traditional circuits that we had so far. We had Monza the last round, and now we go to Silverstone, what a lot of people consider the home of motorsports. So it's going to be great, I think.
Definitely the home of Formula One, as the race held the very first Formula One Grand Prix Championship event all the way back in 1950. And we look to go racing there once again, although this time around I'm going to get the start-finish line position absolutely spot on every single time. Don't hold me to that. Anyway, a big shout out as well to the rest of our sponsors here at World Pro Racing in AMD, GT Omega Racing, Thrustmaster, Gaming Malta and VisitMalta.com. So let's talk about the format of this race first of all. We've got a 15-minute qualifying session. We'll then have a 30-minute sprint race and an hour-long feature race. Both races have a 10-minute pit window halfway through the race where refueling is mandatory. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as the situation goes. But it proved to have some good racing last time, Nico. So I'm hopeful, and I'm sure it's going to bring us more of the same at Silverstone.
Absolutely. The pit stop window, a lot of people criticize it a little bit, simply because it takes away some of the more risque strategies that people want to pull off. But I think overall, especially with traffic management, with just knowing where in the field you are, and just, with all the different approaches for fuel that you can go to, I think it's a very good idea, and I can't wait to see how these people will, calculate when they want to pit and how they have to pit just to get the most time out of the pit stop.
Yeah, but you're interesting to see when drivers pit, as you rightfully said. And when it comes to fueling, not the tyre changes, they are not mandatory, but when it comes to fueling, when you pit in that pit window is going to be really down to the strategy. How late do you leave it? And when you're lapping at a track like Silverstone, you've got about 3 laps, maybe pushing 4 laps, to actually decide when to go into that pit window. So it's all going to be playing into the strategy. How early do you pit? Maybe how late do you pit? Do you run with a heavier car in the early part of the race and then run with a lighter car at the end, or vice versa? It does give that sort of a challenge to these drivers, Nico.
Absolutely, and so I think, especially in the longer race, so to say enduro in comparison to the sprint first, I think it'll be a very, very interesting thing to see if people will actually go for a lighter car first, so in a very early pit stop, maybe just count on, being a bit further, like in the midfield, then having clean air, and then running with the heavier car later, or if people will just go perfect 50-50, or if they just try to go as heavy as possible and then just refuel like 1 or 2 liters. But of course, at the start, they will have a very heavy car.
Yeah, and that's going to be things they're going to have to compromise, things they're going to have to weigh up. Is it quicker to make a pit stop? Is it quicker to have all the fuel at the start and then put in a couple of litres in your pit stop? It's really going to be a roll of the dice and see what sticks. But these drivers have been practicing their strategy for the past week, for the past month, to make sure that they are the quickest out there when they come to the race. Of course, we've got races here in the HyperX Open Series over the next couple of months. The next one, is right about now, but we've also got one on the 4th of June, followed by the 2nd of July. That's at the Nürburgring for the one in June, and Misano in the one in July. So a wide variety of tracks being shown to our drivers at Silverstone today, a circuit that has a lot of heritage.
Absolutely, and of course, there's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of changes from the original circuit, of course, as well, and we have this arena section now, which some people criticize, some people think it is quite nice, and I think For example, Abbey is a quite fun corner to be around because you can just mess up so easily and then people will just pounce on you. And of course, turn 13, 14, 15, that entire section in the arena. You can take so many different lines in there, and especially in these hyper-competitive GT3 cars, which are just so close together thanks to BOP. It's going to be very interesting to see who can just, well, win the most time there, win the most positions there, and, you know, who will maybe be a little bit overconfident and then regret it later.
Well, we're about to find out. Hopefully we'll be able to take you onto track to join our drivers in their practice session at the Silverstone circuit and see how they're getting on, and more importantly to see what cars they're going to choose here for the Open Series. And we join with the driver Tinko van der Velde in the Sidemax Motorworks car in the McLaren, and it is absolutely pouring with rain at the moment. Well, it is, to be fair, it is Silverstone, it is Britain. I wasn't really expecting anything less.
Yeah, I was about to say, you know, classical British weather, so it'll be, I'd say it's definitely going to be a big challenge now for everyone involved, and yeah, I'm looking forward to see how people will cope with that situation, because of course, Silverstone in the wet, in the dry, it's already quite tricky, especially with these high-speed sections like here, Maggots, Beckets, and Chapel. Now going through Beckett's actually here, and now through Chapel, whereas we watch Tinko van der Velde. But yeah, one of the many things where you just have to be so confident and so conscious about the placement of puddles as well.
Yes, that's going to be a huge thing as well. Luckily, the track is only wet. It's not flooded yet. But if you have a look at the top there, that weather forecast, over the next 10 minutes or 30 minutes, the rain's only going to get heavier. So that's not a great sign for our drivers. And to that extent as well, there's hardly any wind at this circuit. So the rain that is here is going to stay here, and that's going to stay around for a long time. There's Luke Whitehead, who's our current pace setter in this practice session, 2 minutes 5.3 as he now makes his way in towards the penultimate corner and onwards towards the final corner, going through Luffield and then in towards Woodcote towards the start finish line to set another lap time on the board. He'll come across the line. Can he improve on his previous lap time? No, he was on a little bit of a slower lap time that way around. But, you know, that these windscreens are going to be working overtime in this race alone. Alex Leif then in the Nissan, in the TPC Sim Racing Nissan to be more precise, in the number 302, making his way now in towards the final couple of corners. He now makes his way on through Brooklands, then in towards Luffield, getting a little bit of curb just going in towards Luffield then. Not an ideal line because the car likes to swap on you with the weight transfer there. However, he puts the power down then through Woodcote and onwards towards the start finish line. Let's see what Leif then can do in the Nissan as he crosses the line. It's a 2:08.4. That's only 0.2 off his personal best, so pretty consistent at the moment.
Absolutely, and just overall, I think you know, the pure lap time pace, that's of course one thing that you need to be in front, of course, and qualifying will be absolutely well, I can't stress how big of an importance it has around here, especially in these conditions. But the thing that's even more important than this is just consistency and knowing your lines around other cars as well. Because of course, when you're just lapping by yourself, you can just take the racing line perfectly every time and just try to hit the corner just perfectly every single time around. And, you know, you're not impeded by anything else. But when you're in a pack of like 10, 15, 20 cars, you constantly just have to look, where do I have to adjust my braking? Where do I have to avoid? Because these guys, they're not just following the racing line, they're racing each other. So they're just constantly looking side by side. Where can I stick it down the inside? Where can I just go around the outside? And where can I just gain the most time to these guys?
Yeah, it's a good chance for this practice session, especially to make all of your mistakes. It's that last chance, because once you get to qualifying, it's 15 minutes out here, but you're looking at the moment, the fastest lap time we've had in this practice session is a 2:05, so I'm expecting drivers to turn up the wick slightly on the engine, maybe into a 2:04. There you can see Luke Whitehead has the fastest two sectors out of anybody. The last sector, the fastest driver through there so far has been Hamada Akizi, currently 4th place in the standings. So that's an interesting one. He's just under 0.2 quicker than Luke Whitehead through the final sector.
Yeah, and I think honestly it's very impressive from Whitehead actually to be on top with the Ferrari, because it's a very specific car overall, especially the Ferrari Evo which he's driving. It's very strong when you get the setup right, but you have to put a lot of effort into the setup here. And of course, McLaren is notoriously strong here at Silverstone. it's well, a lot of people actually say, you know, that this car was basically built around this track. So really just impressive to see Whitehead in the Ferrari just on top right here.
And there is Tinko van der Velde then across the line. Last lap was a 2:05.5, but it was a lap that was invalidated. So he must have run wide somewhere, or a little bit of corner cutting there, which means the lap time won't count. There's Chris Bourne then in the XR Virtual Motorsport Ferrari in the number 118, making his way through in towards Luffield and then towards Woodcote then. Obviously the McLaren at the British circuit here in Silverstone. He's automatically going to be a fan favourite around here. But through the final corner and onwards towards the start-finish line, currently 16th fastest in this practice session and stays 16th fastest with his fastest lap time at the practice session so far, a 2:08.6, and he goes off, and that will be straight back to the pit lane. There's Boychev then in the FDS Racing Aston Martin, 8th fastest so far from the Bulgarian, 2:07.2.
Yeah, overall, still probably trying to find his rhythm here. And of course, in these conditions, no one can blame him really, because we've only been in this practice session for 10 minutes ever since they got out of the briefing. And of course, they only have 5 more minutes to... there we are, actually. Probably trying to compensate for some understeer that he had in the lap before, now trying to turn in earlier. Suddenly you have that grip, and, well, then you're just suddenly over that inside curb, and you're in a very uncomfortable situation. So a lot of people still have to just dial in properly how they feel the grip, how they can feel that they can push to the maximum level, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see if the guys can actually get it dialed in up to the qualifying session, which of course will be in less than 5 minutes now.
Yes, there's Oscar Saristo then making his way now in the OSS Racing car through the final, or it's the mid part of the track, I should say. No, he's already got it wrong once, that's fine, don't worry about it. Club corner then on towards the new pit complex, on towards the Hamilton Straight and towards Abbey and Farm. You used to turn left here, nowadays you turn right, and it's just a terrifying corner in the dry, let alone when it's pouring down with rain.
Absolutely, and I mean, in Formula 1 cars at least, it's, you know, relatively simple. You just go almost flat out, or depending on, you know, if you have that, you go flat out. But in these cars, you know, you just have to really push it on the limit, go over that curb, and of course, that curb is rather bloodthirsty, so to say, especially in these conditions.
It's a bit of an understatement, that one. Radegard then wins Aristo, then making his way in towards the final couple of corners. All the back end swaps on him there, in through Brooklands. He manages to gather the car up though, so a little bit of a half spin for him, but does recover and is able to carry on. But that just looked like the rear tyres started to over-rotate there, Nico.
Yeah, and especially this corner, Brooklands, you have to brake really late, of course, in comparison to the old layout. You have a bit of a wider corner radius, so you take it faster, and you also approach way faster. So in these conditions, you know, getting the car settled in properly while not losing too much time, it's just really, really difficult. And even a car like the Nissan, which is, of course, front mid-engine with a rather low center of gravity, which is overall just very, very famous for being a stable car, but still very agile. You know, when even that car is struggling there, then you know it's serious business.
Yeah, absolutely. Dean Vella now tackling through Abbey and then through Farm Curve then, with the rain still pouring down on the circuit, and now making his way up towards Village then, braking hard for this final sector, then in towards one of the slowest corners on the entire track, in towards the loop, down into first gear to try and hit that apex, and then back onto the power, up through the gears, through Aintree, and then down the Wellington Straight. Dean Vella currently 16th fastest in this practice session, just under 3 seconds off of the fastest lap time posted by Luke Whitehead earlier on in the session. He now makes his way in towards Brooklands then, just trying to fly his way through, trying to make sure that car doesn't over-rotate like it did for Saristo just a moment ago. In through Luffield, and then back onto the power as early as you dare. It can be a little bit of understeer if you get on the power too early, but he makes his way through Woodcote and on towards the start-finish line. Is this going to be an improvement for Dean Vella in the GT Omega RPM eSports car? It is going to be an improvement on time, but not position. Stays in 16th place.
And you can just see he improves quite a bit, but it's just a couple of thousands now that he just has to gain more to get past David Ohak. But it's just so close here, and actually we have silver pyramids here. Driving I think the Nissan the last time around, so on Tuesday for for the Super Sprint Tuesday, but this time actually driving the 650S. And when I said the McLaren is built for Silverstone, I normally meant the newer generation, the 720S. The 650S, well, I'd say an even more peculiar choice than Sheldon Muscat's Honda NSX at Hungaroring.
Yeah, and Mega Sprint Tuesdays, of course, he was the only really Honda runner in the field, but he made it work for third and second in the 3 races we had then. His Silver Pyramids towards the line and does make an improvement on his position. 209.987 puts him 24th fastest in this practice session. David Ohak across the line then, currently 15th fastest, and will stay 15th fastest in this practice session. 208.286, but I do believe Luke Whitehead is still at the head of the table then in this practice session. Just under 40 seconds to go in this session then before the drivers will get ready and get themselves wound up for qualifying, where it will literally have to be just a couple of laps then to get themselves as high up the order as possible. And we've seen in the past, Nico, a good grid position here in both races is pretty essential to try and make it through turn 1. And what a turn 1 to try and make it through, Copse Corner.
Absolutely, of course, the original turn 1, so to say. And, well, never really an easy corner, really never, because like in the very old layout they had this humongous inside curb, which they then replaced with a very flat one, but you know, the cars got faster and everything. And even though there's a tarmac runoff on the outside, because it's just such a sudden closing of the corner, you know, it's very fast, but it just still closes very, very suddenly, very quickly, while the track is still quite wide, so people are just trying to go very quickly through it, side by side, and of course, if someone on the outside just adjusts it, well, just turns in a bit too quickly, and on the inside they don't follow suit, then you're going to have carnage immediately.
Oh, Saristo then already in trouble then as the back end swapped on him there, but he's able to recover it and make his way onto, well, at least avoid the gravel trap, that's for sure. Checkered flag is out for the practice session then as we watch Silver Pyramids then in the Ninko Racing McLaren make his way now up towards the final couple of corners. He'll tackle Brooklands first and then just through that left-hander, then through the right-hander of Luffield then as the car a little bit twitchy on the run through in towards Brooklands, then in towards Luffield, the penultimate corner, before you then get back onto the power and charge your way through Woodcote and towards the start-finish line. Currently 24th fastest in this practice session. Can he make an improvement in that McLaren as he crosses the line? Yes, he can. He goes 13th fastest, so a good improvement then, and maybe just holding back a little bit more pace. I'm expecting the drivers here in this qualifying session to be into the 204s because you don't want to reveal too much of your qualifying pace in that practice session.
Absolutely, and of course it's always a bit of a mystery as well, because in these rainy conditions you never quite know how wet the track is, you know, because of course you have, well, you have, I always, just out of instinct, because I like to trigger people, I call it moist, but of course it's called greasy, then damp, then wet, and then of course flooded. But within these little things, there's still so much pace difference that you just never can gauge properly. Can you really go fast at this point, or is this really just is the track really this slow right now?
Well, before we get into qualifying, of course, it is one of our team's birthday today. It is Nathan Mifsud, who's behind the cameras. A happy birthday to you. Hope you're having a great day, and hopefully we'll treat you to some great action that you're watching along too. So, yeah, hope you've had a good day, and it's only going to get better because we've got some qualifying at Silverstone coming up for you. But let's talk about qualifying then, because when it comes to qualifying in the dry, as we're just about to come into the session now, qualifying in the dry, you're looking at about that sort of 2 minutes 10 outlap, but you're more looking at 2.5 minutes in this rain, surely.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course they have the new tire compound, which is mostly on the dry tires, but the rain tires also got a little bit of an overwork just on how they just handle in the rain overall and how quickly they wear off. So of course the 2020 DLC has been out for some time now. However, it's still something that some drivers have to get used to, because simply the handling of cars in the rain, of course, it's just way more complex to simulate, and of course way more complex to be affected by a change of any tire parameter in these conditions. So I'm really excited to see how people will handle this, as we see Jan-Niklas Erbrich take a very wide line through Luffield to now get the maximum momentum for his run through Woodcote to start his first flying lap.
Absolutely, and name a better duo than Jan-Niklas Erbrich and being first out on track in qualifying. And you can't name one, it's just impossible, as the DJ racing car makes his way now in through Copse Corner. And normally a corner you'd try and take fourth gear through there, but not while the track is wet like this. Now making our way now on towards this legendary section of Maggots, then in towards Beckett's and Chapel Curve coming up. But you can see how treacherous these conditions make this high-speed section as you now try and get back onto the power in second gear, then in through Chapel Curve and down the hanger straight, then as you now get back onto the power and have Stowe in your eye line here as you go descending down. And then there's a little bit of a curb as you then go up the hill, then as you break in towards Stowe Corner, with the crowd on your left hand side, taking it nice and easy through there, hugging the curb and making sure you hit the apex, then through Vale and then onto towards the club corner section, braking hard, then careful not to use the curbs too much in these slippery conditions, slowing that car down now, first gear through in towards the club corner section as you make your way through now on towards the Hamilton straight. Don't clout that sleeping policeman on the inside too much, otherwise you'll unsettle the car. Now on towards the Hamilton straight, turn right at Abbey as you fly through here, down the gears. Then do we get a third gear through Abbey? No, we stay in fourth as we make our way then in through Farm Curve through the long left-hander, then bit of understeer you saw then going through Farm, but managing to gather it up, then in towards Village then, and this is a part of the track you really have to slow the car down for, in towards the loop then, slowest part of this circuit, back onto the power as soon as you possibly can then as you make your way through Aintree, flat out through here through this long left-hander on towards the Wellington straight with Brooklands in your eyesight. Then watch out for the right hand side to try and pick out your braking spot then as you try and make sure you slow that car down. You're almost having to trail brake in towards Brooklands here, try and grab the apex. It's a very late apex into Brooklands, make sure you don't miss it. Then in towards Luffield, a couple of lines you can take through here, all of them are just as quick as each other, and there you can see Erbrich then trying to take a line that prioritises the apex and the corner exit speed. Then finally in through Woodcote and towards the start finish line, Jan-Niklas Erbrich will set the fastest lap of the session. Of course he's first to the line and quickly beaten then by Van der Velde in the number 66 McLaren, but a pretty nifty lap around Silverstone.
And then, we have actually we have Ashton Cox, there we are, just quickly spinning off. I think that is the beginning or just about the middle after turn 16. That should be the Wellington straight. Just a little bit too optimistic on the outside curb there, but as we just had that, Van der Velde, of course, you know, instantly beating Erbrich, but instantly beaten by 0.006 of a second by Luke Whitehead. You can just see what the level of competitiveness is in this field.
No doubt about that. Chris Bourne then currently out there going through the loop, and the number 118 Ferrari, the XR Virtual Motorsport car, making his way in through Aintree and on towards the Wellington straight as he has Brooklands in his sight then as we see the order go and shift up and down, but 0.006 of a second separating the top two drivers in this qualifying session so far. I mean, I can't wait to see how that develops. I mean, when it comes to a wet track, it's not necessarily that the track improves. It's more a case of the drivers get more confident and start to understand where the standing water is and how far they can push those tyres before they just simply give up, as Chris Bourne then comes across the line then and goes 11th fastest, 2:09.0 for the XR Virtual Motorsport car, puts him firmly into that midfield.
Yeah, overall, very good time. And then we have Silver Pyramids, of course, with, well, I would say the oldest car on the grid right now, because every other car has basically been through some sort of refit. I think the 650S was actually still racing while the Mercedes was racing the SLS, if I remember correctly. So, quite an old car here, and interesting to see that car choice from Silver Pyramids, of course. The Ninka Racing driver always going for a little bit of the odd choice, but yeah, either way, 5.2 seconds off the pace right now, but within range to attack Medvedevas. Sorry about that.
Medvedevas, yes. Yeah, Arturas
there we
Medvedevas. So yeah, there's a good attempt then, Nico, for sure. But the yes, the number 115 then in the Ferrari, currently 19th fastest. Yeah, there's a couple of, well, just under a tenth in it between the two of them. Silver Pyramids now makes his way through the final couple of corners. He'll make his way through Brooklands as this helicopter cam brings us through in towards Luffield then, as Piermitz will be trying to get back onto the power as early as he possibly can, and of course building up the speed then through Woodcote and towards the start finish line. Currently 20th fastest in this qualifying session. Can he improve and get himself up the order? He can. He's now 3.5 seconds off the lead pace. He was up into 19th before he's then been back down to 20th.
And that's just how quickly sometimes this rhythm can change, you know, when people just finally find that little sweet spot there. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, sometimes it takes, well, as we saw, you know, 1 or 2 laps. And of course, it's only a bit of time left, so I think it's really just a stress test of people's psyche here, you know. How much pressure can they take when they see that clock ticking down? And, well, this lap isn't really short either, so, you know, if you exit now, best you can do is probably 3 timed laps. So, you know, it's just really this constant reminder of, you know, I really have to get this perfect lap now, and it depends on how good people can do this, as Oscar Saristo improves there to go up to 14th place.
And Carly Atkins then up into provisional pole position, 206.2 then from the PC Boys driver, so puts him now on top. So Luke Whitehead really has to respond in the Ashtar racing car, making his way now, riding on board with him as we head through Aintree. You saw then the car fighting him, going through the left-hander, wanting to turn right as he now makes his way on towards Brooklands then, the windscreen wiper working overtime in these conditions, and again so confident on the brakes and so confident in the car that it's going to be able to take the punishment of the heavy braking. Then in towards Luffield we go with little steering adjustments and arrangements, just slight, as he now makes his way out of Luffield, building up the speed and might help with a little bit of tow from the car ahead through Woodcote and towards the start finish line. Is he going to improve on his time? He is. 2:05.5 from Luke Whitehead now puts him 7/10 clear of Carly Atkins.
Basically improved a second there, so just astonishing, you know, how Luke Whitehead just sometimes brings these times out just in the middle of qualifying, or just, well, 6 minutes to go, you know, like he gets his first couple times in, so that's a banker basically, you know, just getting himself into the car, getting the first couple laps in, and it would almost seem like, you know, he's just feeling out the situation if he can go full throttle yet. But, yeah, just absolutely impressive.
Yeah, just to pull, you know, he was 2/10 behind, so he's pulled out 9/10 of a second on that lap alone to get up to the top spot right now. It'll be interesting to see if the likes of Atkins, the likes of Helsel can respond to that, and Van der Velde as well. He showed good, strong pace in the practice session earlier on, so we'll have to wait and see if he can put in an even better lap in these treacherous conditions. There's Arturas Medvedevas then making his way through in towards Brooklands, now on towards Luffield, the driver from Lithuania, just trying to make sure he gets the power down then out of Luffield, and then towards Woodcote he will go. Currently 21st fastest then in this qualifying session. He'll make it to the line. Is this going to be an improvement in time? It is. He goes 19th fastest now, within 4 seconds of our pole position, or a provisional pole position, man, of Luke Whitehead.
Yeah, and quite honestly, considering how much Whitehead is just, well, blowing out of that car, because quite honestly, it almost seems like he's just flying with that thing. And, you know, being 7/10 clear, like being 3 seconds within P2, I think that's overall already quite a good time, especially considering these conditions here right now.
There's Marcus Corolla then making his way through Abbey, then in towards Farm Curve, currently on a flying lap right now, I do believe, as he makes his way in towards Village then, slowing this car down then, as he then makes his way onwards towards the loop. Not many Mercedes running today. He's joined in good company though by Kalai Atkins, who's currently second place in this qualifying session. Just the 3 seconds, or 2.8 if you want to be picky, separates the two drivers at the moment. But now he makes his way on towards the Wellington Straight and towards Brooklands then, as he tries to find the grip out there. It's tough to do on a circuit that's as wet as this. Now in towards Luffield he will go. It's all about trying to find the best exit you can out of Luffield, because it can make or break your lap time here. He takes a little bit of curb on the exit, then it can be very slippery on the left-hand side then. Coming up towards Woodcote then, and towards the start-finish line, currently 19th fastest, improves to 17th fastest then, 2:08.7, puts him just over 3 seconds off the lead pace right now.
And it's these small but steady steps that can sometimes really just help you along. As we look at Dean Vella now in 11th place, so he's going to be hoping to get a little bit further up ahead than the 6th row. Of course, still quite a good position to be in. However, of course, you always just want to look out, and oh, he's going to have to look out now. That was one of the DJ Racing Bentleys there. So that was either Jan-Niklas Erbrich or David Ohak.
I think it was Erbrich.
Yeah. Very good reflexes, though, not to go too wide there. And I think that was... Oh, actually, yeah, an improvement. There we are.
Mighty close, though, when he spun up the rear wheels to rejoin out of Luffield. But, yeah, he did very well to avoid it. There's Dean Riley, then, in the number 1 Aston Martin. Number 1. That's a huge weight on your shoulders, then. But maybe it's his favourite number. You never know. Through in towards Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight, currently 5th fastest in this qualifying session, as he now makes his way up towards Brooklands and Luffield to end the lap, then in towards the flying left-hander of Brooklands then. And yeah, Brooklands, Nico, just very quickly, it's a bit of an odd corner because the apex of the corner is so late, but then again, you might have to sacrifice the apex in order to make sure your entry and exit out of Luffield is perfect.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially in these wet conditions, you know, like, we see people taking a lot of curb. A lot of curb, and I think that's just, well, they're riding the blade between brave and silly, simply because in rain conditions, you know, you never really know how the car's going to react over certain curbs here. Because you can see here, for example, Ivalo Boychev in 9th place, you know, very confidently still, like, just barely taking a little bit of curb on the runoff, but not really doing any more rotation on there. So it's always how you position the car perfectly there. And you just always have to look out, because you think that, you know, one lap it works, you do something minuscule different in the next lap, and the car's just going to take you alley-oop, just like a raging bull.
Here comes Boychev then towards the line, currently 9th fastest, goes 6th fastest then, within 1.5 seconds of Luke Whitehead's 2:05.5, puts him onto the 3rd row of the grid. There's Sheldon Muscat, who at one point in this qualifying session was as high as 3rd place. He's currently just over 1.5 seconds off the provisional pole position time, but he's winding down now to end this lap as he now makes his way in the car, twitching as he went through Brooklands, now in towards Luffield, and this is the part where you need the car to bite. Now coming out of the penultimate corner and on towards Woodcote, towards the start-finish line. What can Muscat do? Can he get even quicker than 7th place as he crosses the line? He can. He goes 6th fastest and moves himself back ahead of Boychev then for that coveted 3rd row on the grid. Oscar Saristo then, as we head in towards the last 20 seconds of this session, he'll get another lap if he wants one. Goes 12th fastest on that last lap of the number 9 car, 2.2 seconds off provisional pole. Carly Atkins into the pit sense, as is Dean Riley, so neither of them will be making improvements, 2nd and 4th at best respectively for both of them. But Herzl is out there, currently 3rd fastest, and not too much time to find to try and get onto that front row of the grid. Checkered flag is out, and the first driver who's going to grab it is the number 63 car, so that's going to be Malsharek then, who comes across the line, 18th fastest to finish off his session. There's Tinko van der Velde then, as he makes his way now on towards this sort of halfway point of the track, making our way in towards this club corner section. It's so tight, so difficult to make sure you grab the apex of each and every corner here, making his way through club and onto the Hamilton Straight on this new pit lane complex. And then towards Abbey, you turn right there. What can Van der Velde do then in the Side Max Motorsworks number 66 car? And just such a fearsome corner is Abbey. Then Farm immediately follows before this very heavy braking zone of Village then through the right-hander. Then you've got the loop coming up as well, slightly wide on the exit. Then don't want to light up the rear tyres then as you get onto the paintwork of the curbs. Back onto the power then as we exit the loop in through Aintree and then onwards towards the Wellington Straight. Luke Whitehead can't improve on his time, so he will be staying on a 2:05.592. So Van der Velde then has a chance to try and get himself further up the order. He's got Muscat behind as well, somewhere out on track, so we'll have to keep an eye on those times. You've got Jimmy Holm in 9th place, Dean Veller 11th, and Saristo all still on a flying lap right about now, as we see then Van der Velde coming out of the penultimate corner, onwards then towards Woodcote and towards the start-finish line. Can he get higher than 5th place on the grid? We're about to find out. He can. 4th fastest then for Van der Velde. Jimmy Holm then in the another homing missile, number 777 car. coming towards the line, currently 9th fastest in the McLaren, goes 6th fastest then as the last driver really to cross the line, so he will start on the 3rd row of the grid. But Luke Whitehead grabbing pole position by over 7/10 of a second. That is a commanding advantage heading into these races.
Absolutely, but the thing is, of course, it doesn't matter how big the gap is, you always have to look out at the start, and I think, honestly, Carly Atkins, he's in a prime spot right now. As we all know, the Mercedes is a naturally aspirated engine, a big V8 at that, and it has a lot of power, so surrounded by turbo cars, I don't think he's too worried about the start right now, if he just gets the timing correctly.
Yeah, and that's going to be a huge point then. Of course, in these races, rolling starts towards the line in both races. We've got the sprint race coming up first, which is half an hour. 10-minute pit window halfway in the race, so it'll open once there's 20 minutes left to go. Then it will close, 10 minutes left to go. And if that sounds like your kind of jig, head over to worldproracing.com/events, where we've got plenty of events coming up on multiple platforms, including Assetto Corsa Competizione and also R Factor 2. There's pretty much events being added every single week, so if that sounds like your kind of jig, make sure you head over to the website and we'll hopefully see you out on track. Maybe we'll be able to shout over you, myself and Nico, at some point in the near future. We'd love to be able to. But we're going to focus now on the race because, Nico, we've got 30 minutes. This is the sprint race of the night, followed by the hour-long feature race later on after that. So what can we expect then in a sprint race? Turn 1 at Copse. I think what would have been said in the briefing is you can't win the race at turn 1.
Yeah, and, well, this is always the thing, it always gets said, but it's so tempting, especially in a sprint race, when you see a gap, you want to go for it. Ayrton Senna, of course, said, if you don't no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver. And of course this is virtual, but these guys want to prove that they are racing drivers, so they really have to wage the risk and the reward here, as good as they can, and just end up with the hopefully right decision. And Copse, as I said, it's a very challenging corner, especially for a first corner. I think Abbey there is a little bit more relaxed, to be honest, even if it is faster, because you simply just have a wider corner radius, and it doesn't just close in as extremely. So people will have to watch out, especially in the rain, and I'm just hoping that we won't see a too big crash here.
Hopefully not. Hopefully you don't curse it just yet, Nico. Hopefully in that race we are expecting the rain to ease off slightly, but it is still going to rain throughout this entire sprint race. So fingers crossed, if there's an equivalent of a dry dance, we'll do that at some point. However, we're moments away then. We're counting down to the start of the race 2 of the HyperX Open Series. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously the rain might be easing, so there might be a change in driving style at the end of this race.
Absolutely, and quite honestly, it's all about tire management if the rain is easing. Because if, for example, we already go down to damp conditions, then the tires will, of course, still have more grip than dry tires, but they will start overheating quite a bit, so people will have to look for these puddles that they normally dread, and, just to cool down the tires, and, well, just to manage that while defending or attacking. It's very, very tricky, to say the least, and I'm interested to see, if we get these conditions, how the drivers will be able to cope with it.
Yeah, Khalil Atkins put in a good performance there, like we know he can in that car. Second place on the grid, and in theory he might have a good line going through in towards Copse. He's going to have a prime position to try and take that race lead away from Luke Whitehead. The only problem is what separates him from that is Copse corner.
Absolutely, and of course, being on the outside for that, you're a little bit disadvantaged, but as I said, it's a naturally aspirated engine. The Mercedes is very strong on starts. I think one of the strongest cars, only to be surpassed by the Porsche, and you just really have to watch out when you're in a turbo car, that you just time it perfectly, that you're right on the trigger, and that you're positioned perfectly, just to have a little bit more space ahead of Atkins here, in Luke Whitehead's case.
Yeah, following Copse then, if that fails, they've got Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel Curve. Obviously, quite a few incidents could be had there. We saw past instances in for example, the mega sprint that we had earlier on this year, how it can be very, very sketchy going through Maggots, trying to go through there 2 or 3 wide. The drivers can do it. However, they've got to try and slightly behave themselves because it's less favourable conditions to go 3 wide, especially when it's pouring down with rain.
Absolutely. I mean, in the dry, it's already very, very difficult to go 2 wide there. I managed to make a pass around there once, which, you can't really say around the inside or the outside, simply because it's just going left, right, and never ends. But it's just so tricky. You have to rely on the tires so much, and of course, you have way more grip in the dry than you have in the wet, as the guys now set off to get rolling for the start.
And we are rolling here for the first race of tonight here in the HyperX Open Series. Luke Whitehead on the left of your picture, Carly Atkins on the right then. They approach the start-finish line then, waiting for the green wag to be waved here. As they make their way across the line, it'll be waved at some point. There it goes, and we are racing then. Luke Whitehead tries to get a good start then. Carly Atkins then around the outside. He tucks back in then through turn 1 and tucks into the slipstream as we make our way now upwards towards Maggott and Beckett's for the very first time then. And it's 2 wide behind them in the distance. I think Dean Riley going side by side with Jimmy Holm in the background then and holding on to 5th place. So we're going to car spearing off the road then on the right-hand side. Did they make the corner or not? I'm not too sure, but Luke Whitehead, though, holding on to the lead of this race then. Carly Atkins then in 2nd, Herzl in 3rd place. It's pretty much the positions have been held down for at least the top 6, but we're still going side by side. Sheldon Muscat then trying to move up a couple of positions. He's down to 9th place, and he's got one of the DJ racing cars going up the inside. That's Jan-Nicholas Erbrich going through Stowe Corner. Onwards then towards Val. We've got the 2 Aston Martins up ahead going side by side. That's Boychev and Riley battling away for position as well, as that is Riley going down the inside of Boychev, then going in towards this first part of the club corner section. Boychev still has the inside line, but he can't quite get the power down. And the 2 Bentley's making contact then. Muscat just about getting in front, but Jan-Nicholas Erbrich then making contact with the rear quarter panel on the right-hand side, and both drivers still facing the right way. So pretty good from them, at least from their point of view. They're still facing the right way. Luca Ziga then has fallen slightly off. He probably was... Oh, we got a spinner right in the middle of the exit of Abbey. Then one Mercedes, I think that would have been Corolla, could have been Corolla, because there's only 2 Mercedes in this race, and the other one is in 2nd place. So Corolla spinning out then at Abbey, and very lucky not to be collected by anybody.
Absolutely, and I'm not quite sure if it was maybe a collision or if it was maybe just a little bit too hard on one of the curbs, either inside or outside. It just can happen so quickly. As we now look at Ashton Cox really trying to... Oh my goodness me, there's another car just off. I think that's... Oh boy, the number 115 car.
Number 115 is Medvedevas. Arturas Medvedevas, in the Lithuanian, finds himself doing a little bit of rallycross. Not ideal in a Ferrari, that is for sure, but he's fallen slightly down the order, but he is still facing the right way. Dean Veladay going round the outside, going through Woodcote then, and towards the start-finish line, then trying to get the move on David Ohak. They're going to be running side by side, going in towards Copse Corner. Ohak commits to the inside line, then will he run a little bit wide? He slightly does, but he keeps enough momentum to give Dean Vella something to think about. Tries to find an open door. That door is shut though, and Dean Vella has to stay behind David Ohak. Really good driving then from the 2 drivers. Ohak just about holding on to 14th place.
Normally it's a thing of parking on the apex, but with the Bentley, David Ohak really knows how to move it. It's basically parking on the straight line, so to say. And there we look at that. Lucas Ziga just actually getting such a good start, just touching the back of Ashton Cox. And oh my goodness me, that is just not optimal at all, is it?
No, it's not. So there was contact between himself and Ashton Cox, and that caused a little bit of a Constantina effect. We'll leave it to the stewards to see what happened there, but that would have explained why a car looked like it speared off the road going through in towards Copse Corner right about there. So that sort of clears things up. Luke Whitehead then in the Astral Racing Ferrari, currently leading the way by just over 1 second ahead of Carly Atkins in the number 6 Mercedes. Then it's Van der Velde, who started this race in 5th, now up into 3rd place. It's a really good start from the Dutchman. There's Simon Speth then in the Balfour Motorsport McLaren, trying to hold off Saristo then, as we now make our way onwards towards Village then. This very tight right-hander, followed by the even tighter left-hander of the loop. You can see the Nissan then trying to find an outside move going in towards the loop. Maybe he's trying to find a better line. He won't find a better line by going into the back of the McLaren like that. going through now in towards Aintree and now onto the Wellington Straight. He could find himself into the clutches slightly of the Soul Lamborghini of Mauscherek then as we make our way on towards Brooklands for the second time. But Mauscherek just can't quite find the momentum that he needed to get his way through. Marcus Carola then, we did see him a lap ago facing the wrong way, or at least facing sideways, going through Abbey. Let's see what happens then. He turns in and the back end swaps on him. And there was actually another incident already. Then he makes contact, but I think that was with a Lexus there. That could have been Kunshabo.
I think I think that was a Bentley. I think that was Peresada, because he actually got speared off quite a bit as well. But it seems luckily for him, Peresada didn't quite go that far off that he would hit the right side wall. So,
Dean Riley.
Luck and bad luck, and Riley just, that was very, very risky there. Tried his best to rejoin safely, but of course, that section there, Beckett's into Chapel, it's just not easy to rejoin safely there.
And you can see Boychev trying to take advantage of that one as they head towards Stowe Corner. There's Skunshaba then, so he's in a black Lexus, so it wasn't the Tech 1 racing car, but he is under pressure then from one of the DJ racing cars. It's David Ohak trying to find a move in towards Stowe then, looking left, looking right, but there's still no way through then for David Ohak. He'll have to stay behind for now. Dean Riley then and Boychev fighting for 6th place in this race then. The number 1 versus the number 64. Ivailo Boychev trying to find that way through. He might have the advantage simply because he hasn't been really off the track yet. Silver Pyramids then making his way in through the penultimate corner. He tries to find a move up the inside of the number 158 of Ashton Cox then. They ran side by side for a brief moment. Ashton Cox then. Does he lose that rear end? Because that gave Silver Pyramids absolutely no chance of avoiding that one.
Yeah, I think just a little bit too far on the AstroTurf on the outside. And these Ferraris, they have a lot of torque, especially on the highest engine map. So just a little bit too much AstroTurf. The traction control can't quite cope with it. Bit of oversteer, and of course, sadly here, Silver Pyramids in our oldest car on the grid just gets hit off a little bit. Actually got quite lucky that he didn't hit the pit wall there.
Ooh, here we go. Kirsten Abeya then's trying to hang on to what is PAT, but he's got to... Oh no, Ziga's around then, making contact with Ashton Cox. Ashton Cox also straight into the Armco on the left-hand side of your picture then. So Ziga and Cox making contact. There is Ashton Cox, who's actually now on the left-hand side of the track then, as he now tries to rejoin safely. But how much damage is there going to be on that Ashtar Racing Ferrari? Meanwhile then, riding on the rear wing of Dean Riley, he has got Ivailo Boychev right on the back of him as we make our way once again through Maggots and then through Beckett's. Then you can see that rain has slightly eased since the start of this race, but by no means is it getting to a point where drivers will be thinking maybe, possibly, slick tyres might be there. No way, no chance, not with these conditions. But it has eased off very slightly. Dean Riley, though, has got his rear view mirror filled with the number 64 of the FDS Racing Boychev. Let's have a look at a replay here then. So this is on board with Luca Ziga in the Golden Sky car. That's me. He makes his way through. He's got Kirsten Abeya on his left-hand side, making our way through Aintree. He lifts off. There's Ashton Cox on the inside. He lights it up on the AstroTurf. That's what happens, and collects Ashton Cox with him. He actually recovers, doing a full 360 there.
Yeah, so very, very good luck for Ziege in the McLaren. And then, well, actually, you could see it on his onboard there. On the left, we had Ashton Cox obviously getting spun off by that contact. And then on the right side, we had the other Ferrari there, and for the life of me, I will not try to say his name again because I just don't want to butcher it.
Medvedevas.
Medvedevas, yeah, there we are. Hey, it actually worked this time.
There you go.
But yeah, he tried to take evasive action and then just hit the right side wall. Actually came out on top in comparison to Cox, I think, but maybe through the damage because he hit the wall with quite a lot more speed. Just had to pull back a little bit now, and I think actually he went to the pits for that.
Yeah, Kunshaba then currently in 12th place. He's got David Ohak right behind him, so Ohak has found a way past Dean Vella. Meanwhile, Vella and Speth are battling for position then. Vella has got the inside line. He's having to try and defend from Speth then, who has to go the long way round, going in towards Brooklands then. But Dean Vella just does enough then to keep Speth behind him. This battle then for 14th place as they look to try and apply the power out of Luffield then and onwards towards Woodcote, towards the start-finish line. Just over 20 minutes of this race to go, and we've got a battle here for second place. It's between Atkins and Van der Velde for second place in this race as they make their way through Maggots, Beckett's, and then in towards Chapel Curve then. for this next time around, for the 5th time, I should say. But Van der Velde then doesn't quite get that high-speed section right. He's lost nearly half a second off the back of Atkins there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he just tried to make sure that he could see precisely where he was positioned, because he was literally just inside of Carly Atkins' diffuser and, well, just hit the inside curb of the first little right-hand kink at Maggots a bit too hard. And, of course, with a car that is just generally required to be as low as possible, like the McLaren, you just hit that curb a bit too hard and you're going to be very, very sorry for it.
Indeed you are, as we ride on board in the cockpit of Tico van der Velde in the Sidemax Motorsworks car here as he makes his way through in towards Abbey, then through Farm Curve and onwards then towards Village. He's really tempted to try and get a move done on Carly Atkins then as he makes his way then through Village on towards the loop, and right behind them, well, you've got Hurzel, who's in a little bit of a race of his own, is Calvin Hurzel, and the Good Time Racing 101 Bentley, as sorry, the Aston Martin I should say, as he now tries to tiptoe his way through Aintree now and onwards towards the Wellington Straight. He's around about 3.7 behind Van der Velde, but he's 4.5 seconds clear of Jimmy Holm at the moment. So pit window is now open. So the drivers do have to make a mandatory stop. They're not allowed to change tyres, but they have to refuel in this race. Sorry, they aren't not allowed to change tyres. They can change tyres if they want to. The fuel stop is mandatory. They have to refuel in this race. It'd be interesting to see who the first driver into the pit lane will be.
Yeah, I think at the moment, especially the front runners, Luke Whitehead with a comfortable almost 3-second lead that he has, I think he will be aiming for a very late pit stop, just so he doesn't have the chance to get caught up with traffic. Meanwhile, we see Simon Speth there. He seems to just have the idea, you know, I can't quite make it past Dean Vella right now. You know, like, it's a bit challenging there, and Leaf thinks basically the same thing with the battle up ahead of him. Both of them heading into the pit lane, hoping for more clean air where they come out. And I think that is honestly a very good strategy considering where they are in this little just battle group that we had there the entire time.
Tell you what though, that pit lane speed limit is so slow. You're looking at the best part of 60 kilometers per hour going down there, and it just feels like the pit lane goes on forever. And that's just in the old pit lane complex. The new pit lane complex, it goes on even longer.
Absolutely, but at least in the longer pit lane, in the newer one, you have, well, so to say, a little bit of a shortcut in comparison to the track that actually goes around. That actually used to be a bit of an exploit in endurances that I used to do.
Yeah, but that's why they then made it 60 kilometers per hour. So any advantage you gain there is instantly relinquished once you find yourself in towards the actual pit lane straight part. So that's probably why. But there is Gerli Kunshaba, the Hungarian. He's trying to chase down Chris Board for 10th place. Of course, a couple of pit stops in the order. Now you're probably wondering here what's happening with the battle for second place. Well, Carly Atkins is battling Van der Velde then as they run side by side going through Aintree. They just about leave each other enough room. Now onto the exit. Carly Atkins though gets onto the grass, and that is Van der Velde who gets his way through. Atkins getting slightly onto the grass. He's lost out on second place for now, but put a pin in this one because this battle looks like it's going to keep going on, because Atkins will not be happy about how he gave up that position, lighting the tyres up slightly on the grass. He's down to third place, and I assure you he will be back onto the power, back on it as soon as possible, or he could take a trip to the pit lane and see if he can try a little bit of an undercut. Let's see if that works.
Actually a bit surprising that he would go to pits this early, but then again, Shell Muscat, and I think that's Wojciech right behind him, they're thinking the same thing, so maybe this is now the point where they just want to maybe give their tyres a little bit of a situation to cool down, get new fuel, and then just push with the maximum power again that they can get. As we have Kestner Bayer just trying to go a bit with wider lines so he gets a bit more of momentum there. Or actually can stay more inside, so he can just go for his pit stop now.
Yeah, Kirsten and Bayer also into the pit lane then, and I do have to correct myself as the eagle-eyed will notice that the pit lane speed limit is 50 miles an hour, so that is 80 kilometers per hour and not 60. The number 158 car though is around going through in towards Luffield, and the 158 car is Ashton Cox, so he's had a little bit of a moment then going in towards Luffield, so he's going to fall a little bit further down the order as Spet also gets past him. Kunshabo though, with all those pit stops happening around him, is now up into 7th place, and he's looking at his rear view mirror because David Ohak is still there right behind him in the ever intimidating Bentley.
Absolutely, and I have to actually correct you another time there, because the 50 is actually kilometers per hour, so it's even slower and more excruciating than you think.
I did wonder, like, I did think to myself, no, that's not 50 mile an hour. You'd know if that's 50 mile an hour. But there we go then. So not only have you had a correction from me, but you've had a correction of the correction from Mr. Nico Hillebrand. See, this is why you need two people in the commentary box. Jimmy Holm then in the another homing missile 777 McLaren. Those of you who are very familiar with Road Pro Racing will know his lime green one, the homing missile. Meanwhile then, Peresada going all sorts of wide out of the exit of Club Corner. Can't find his way past the McLaren up ahead as he now tries to find the limits of grip out on circuit. He's certainly finding it now. Just over 5 minutes to go of the pit window, and those you can see with an Peresada gets onto the grass. Around she goes. Can he keep it out of the gravel? Yes, he can, and he'll be able to recover from that one. But you can see there he was pushing hard, but just took too much liberties with the grass on the left-hand side on the entrance in towards Village.
Absolutely. Now we have Luke Whitehead in and Riley in as well. So now this is going to be one of the interesting things to see now. Because we have had Callie Atkins, who ran in relatively clean air this entire time. But is he going to be able to maybe just get closer to Whitehead? Or is Whitehead actually going to be able to gain a bit? Because right now it looks like Whitehead's actually going to be able to gain from it even more. Because now, look at this.
Exiting the pit lane, and he joins a well clear then of the number 6 car there. You can see just making his way in through Copse Corner now. So that gap is even bigger than it was at the start of the pit window. So we were looking at around about 3 seconds as Luke Whitehead, the number 6 car of Atkins came into the pit. To be interested to see when we get to the Sector 2 timing line. That's when it all shuffles about with all the people that have actually come into the pits. There is Atkins then in the Omega Velocity car, making his way down this long back straight of the hangar straight towards Stowe Corner. Fantastic right-hand corner then. Michael Peresada currently into the pit lane. Then just under 4 minutes of the pit window still to go. And still to pit then. Van der Velde, Herzl, Holm, Erbrich, Saristo and Ziga. So there's just a handful of drivers left to make their mandatory stop, and that's the explanation for the little bit of orange with the 1 next to a driver's name. Any driver that has a shadow of green next to their name means they've completed their mandatory stop.
Absolutely, and I think all eyes right now on Van der Velde, simply because he's been getting along with these conditions rather well. He's of course in one of the strongest cars around here, and ever since Whitehead came in, there's been that question now, can Van der Velde maybe profit from that gap a little bit now? Because he's just staying out a bit longer. There's no risk of, traffic for him whatsoever. But now we had a quick yellow flag there in the last corner, 101. That must be Herzl, actually. So that is very unfortunate for him. So maybe something where, for example, Niklas Erbrich could gain a little bit, and Holm, of course, already. He gained from it already, the homing missile coming into the pit lane for his mandatory pit stop.
Yeah, it's not long of that pit window left open. It's going to be on this lap. Pretty much anybody who crosses the line now will have to pit on this lap. So that leaves Van der Velde, Erbrich and Lucas Ziga, who I think is coming into the pits right about now in the number 199, as he's currently making his way through the final corner onto the start-finish line. So he's going to be cutting it fine. He's not going to he's got to make sure the car stays in the right direction for the entire lap, because he will be cutting it fine coming into the pit lane. And Calvin Herzl then has a stop-and-go penalty, 30 seconds on his race, so that's going to be a pit lane or pit stop infringement as he now makes his way then in through Maggots and Beckett's. He's going to be side by side with the other Aston Martin, the other number 1 car of Dean Riley. Riley has to back out of it. He's under pressure as well from a couple of cars behind, Sheldon Muscat being one of them, Kunchabo being another, but I think we'll need some enlightenment as to why Herzl has got that stop and go penalty of 30 seconds. Any chance of him grabbing a podium in this sprint race are all but vanished.
I think that may have been because he just entered the pit lane too quickly. Of course, last corner spin just through Luffield. So frustrating. I can absolutely understand that. But then the thing is, you still have to adhere to the pit lane speed limit. And of course, with 50 kilometers an hour, you just have to brake so much. And of course, in these wet conditions, it's so much more difficult to just judge when you can just brake perfectly without losing time. And of course, if the ABS just, so to say, just anti-lock brakes a little bit too much, then you're just going to enter the pit lane too quickly, and well, the stewards will be pulling you aside and going, well, mates, that is going to be a stop and go 30 seconds. As Van der Velde now hits into the pit lane now, and all eyes are on him where he will come out.
Yeah, so too will Jan-Niklas Erbrich. He has to pit this lap then, because this is the last opportunity. The pit window will be open. His little dot on the minimap is to the right-hand side of the main straight, so that is a huge indication that he's coming into the pits. So Lucas Ziege then is going to be the last driver to find his way into the pit lane, and the number 199 car is now hopefully coming around the final couple of corners. He's only got half a minute to make it to the pit lane, but he's into the final sector somewhere out there. Alex Leaf then currently in 11th place. Van der Velde then exiting the pit lane and rejoining what will be second place in this race, because Carly Atkins there is now into third, and there he is, so he's not too far behind. And in terms of a pit stop then, there wasn't a huge amount of difference between when these two drivers pitted in.
Yeah, absolutely, but well, I think this early pit stop strategy just didn't work out whatsoever for Atkins. But sometimes, of course, as well, it's all about placing the car properly as well. So there's a double challenge to pit lane now, just to, get the car slowed down perfectly, which is, of course, already difficult enough as it is. And then on this slow lane bit, where, well, sometimes it's just a little bit more slippery as well, just to get it slowed down perfectly as well, just to get it on the perfect marker that your pit crew tells you where you have to stop. And if you just stop a little bit too late, a little bit too early, they still have to adjust you. They still have to pull you forward or push you backward as well. And that'll always be a couple seconds that you still lose.
Yes, so Dean Riley trying to get past Calvin Herzl then. This is currently for 4th place, but Herzl will have to serve that stop and go 30-second penalty. He might have to do it within this race. I don't think it's going to be added to the end of his race. It's too early for that, I do believe, but I'd love to be corrected if I'm wrong. However, this is going to be fought out on track for this moment in time. Dean Riley wants to try and find a way past, and I'm sure, Nico, you might have been a little bit involved in something like this, battling someone with a time penalty, especially something like a stop and go 30-second penalty. I mean, what's going through your mind at that point?
Well, if I was in Dean Riley's position, I'd be absolutely fuming in the car. Simply because Herzl, after speeding in the pit lane, he has no one but himself to blame. And, then insisting on just, well, costing me time, perhaps pushing me back into the grasps of the McLaren of Hull right behind. And then also, Muscat, Erbrich, all of those guys are so close behind still. And instead of pulling into the pit lane or just letting me through, he just keeps on insisting on that on-track position and giving me dirt. Yeah, you can see the lights flashing there, so he's definitely not happy with the current situation.
Well, flashing the lights can mean a variety of things in GT racing. It's open to interpretation, but I think that interpretation, Nico, is not a bad one. The stewards are coming through with some penalties then. The number 19 car is going to get a 5-second penalty for an avoidable collision on number 7. So that is going to be Kirsten Abeya getting a 5-second penalty with an incident with Michael Peresada. So I believe there's a couple more coming through. The number 158, which is going to be Ashton Cox, on the number 199. That's going to be of Lucas Ziege, so that's going to be Ashton Cox getting a 5-second penalty for an avoidable collision between the two drivers, so that'll be added on in this race as well. It's only 5 seconds though, so it's not the end of the world, but the stewards have deemed both drivers representative at fault for both incidents, and I'm sure we'll keep you up to date with any penalties that decide to come through. The stewards feel need to be awarded. Luke Whitehead, though, with just over 7 minutes to go in this race, then 5.5-second lead over Van der Velde. Then Carly Atkins is in 3rd place. Herzl on track is 4th place with Dean Riley in 5th. Jimmy Holm is in 6th place with Muscat in 7th. Jan-Niklas Erbrich in 8th. Conchabo in 9th. And Leif rounds off the top 10. The number 22 car is going to find himself a 5-second penalty. So that's Simon Spett on the number 9 car, which was Oscar Saristo. 5-second penalty awarded to the number 22 car. And more penalties on the way, I think.
Yeah, and that is always, what I like to say, like the sign of bad things about to happen, of course. The wonderful view in our communication channel on Discord with Adrian Figallo is typing, you know that something is about to go down.
You do indeed, and of course the stewarding team of Adrian Figallo and George Muscat working hard in the background, making sure the driver standards are met, and if there are any incidents that they are dealt with by our professional stewarding team, of course FIA qualified as well, so these drivers are getting the best of the best standards possible. We've also got a 10-second penalty awarded, so an additional penalty to Ashton Cox, 10 seconds for an avoidable incident and dangerous move on the number 23 car of Silver Pyramid. So that takes his penalties now up to 15 seconds. Hurzel then comes into the pits, no doubt to serve his stop and go penalty.
Yeah, very unfortunate for him, but of course you have to deliver it within 3 laps of having it dished out, so to say. And, well, time penalty would have been preferred for him probably, but if he had just continued on for any more lap, the simulator would have disqualified him.
Absolutely. We've got now a penalty awarded to Lucas Ziga for an avoidable collision with the number 158 car. So that's of Ashton Cox. 10 seconds will be added to Lucas Ziga's time. So penalties being handed out then. We've seen that is typing has stopped for a time being. But of course we'll keep you up to date if there are any more additional penalties as Hurzel then makes his way out of the pit lane then and will rejoin further down the order. 30 seconds is a long time to be held in the pit lane then. So Spet, who will be one of those with a penalty at the end of the race? Boychev is right behind him. Bourne in 13th, Saristo in 14th, Dean Vella in 15th. Battle right now for 11th place as they now make their way in towards Vale and on towards the club corner section. Just under 5 minutes of this race to go. Luke Whitehead leading by 5.4 seconds ahead of Van der Velde. Carly Atkins in 3rd, Dean Riley up to 4th with Jimmy Holm in 5th. Sheldon Muscat in 6th, Erbrich in 7th, Conchabo in 8th. Leaf in 9th and David Ohak rounds off the top 10. There you can see Simon Spet in 11th place with Boychev in 12th, Bourne in 13th, Saristo 14th with Vela in 15th, Malsharek 16th, Pyramid 17th, Perez Sada in 18th. Ziga in 19th, Hurzel in 20th, Cox in 21st, Corolla 22nd and Medvedevus in 23rd place at this moment in time. I believe we do still have 23 cars in the run and we could have a couple more who are just hiding from us at the moment in the standings.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, that is always the thing with, well, you can always see the top 23 cars, or well, the next 23 cars around the position that we're showing, so not always able to show everything. Ah, there we have Kirsten Avaya.
There he is.
I think he's still there, so yeah, 24th place, the number 19 of him, the GT Omega RPM esports driver, not having the best of races, so to say, with a 5-second penalty being dished out, but of course, still going on strong. And yeah, actually, speaking of the penalties, that must be something that Simon Speth has to think about right now as well, because every car close to him right now, so the next place down to 15th, down to Dean Vella, whom he fought so desperately to be ahead of him, whom he tried to out-strategize with his early pit stop, well, all those guys will get past him again.
So close between Spet and Boychev then as Boychev tries to take away that 11th place on track. They now make their way through Chapel Curve onto the Hangar Straight, and of course that Aston Martin will have a little bit of slipstream from the McLaren. Might not be close enough to try and move in towards Stowe. No, he won't be close enough. You can just see there as we ride on board with the rear of Simon Spet then, as you see Boychev trying to find a way past, just applying that pressure, turning up the heat at the moment here at Silverstone as he now makes his way down through Vale and towards the club quarter section. Behind them, Chris Bourne is trying to hold off Oscar Saristo and Dean Vella respectively as they now make their way through this club corner section. Spet then just about holding on to 11th, but as you rightfully said, Nico, he's got 5 seconds worth of penalties, and at worst at the moment that's going to drop him down to 15th place.
Yeah, exactly, and I think he's really just going to try and get his best laps together that he can. Maybe to just, you know, keep 1 or 2 cars just from getting these positions that he's so, you know, so hardly and bravely fought for. And quite honestly, I think with, well, only 2 minutes left, with, I'd say, well, this current lap that Luke Whitehead is on, so for these guys, the next lap and then another lap, you know, it's just not time that you can gain on this track in these conditions.
No, it's not at the moment, but of course that won't stop our drivers from trying, that is for sure. Riding on board then with Dean Vella, he's got Oscar Saristo in his sights as he tries to fight the car and going exiting Brooklands in towards Luffield. We will go and back onto the power, getting onto the curb there and lighting up those rear tyres slightly. He's got to be careful about doing that. You can see it lost him a bit of time then against Saristo as we make our way on towards the start-finish straight and once again towards Copse Corner. Coming at you here. Just over 60 seconds of this race to go, and I wonder where our race leader is. Meanwhile, though, so Saristo trying to find a move past Chris Bourne, then going in towards Maggots here, and he's got the move done then. And I don't think Chris Bourne was going to fight that one too hard then, considering side by side going through Maggots there. Not a great idea at the best of times, but we're going to have here the number 64 of Boychev is also going to have a 5-second penalty for causing an avoidable collision with car number 22. That comes up on the stewards there. So we'll have to look at 22. It could actually be 20. Oh, it is Simon Spett then. So the incident between those two, and that is so unfortunate. So these two are going to be battling for position then. But it's not going to be for 11th place because there's a load of drivers behind them that are going to be taking that position away from them. But at least these took a battle on track, as that is Chris Bourne then running very deep, going in towards Club Corner, almost finding the gravel trap there as he's fighting hard, or was fighting hard for that position.
Absolutely, and well, we see him here, Luke Whitehead, now going over the line. Just, it's always this little moment, you know, like where you think, are they just going to have that little bit of display of dominance, where they just slow down and say, yeah, I will end the race here, I think, I've had my fill. Or if they're just going to do this, you know, little, I'm going for first gesture out of the window of the car and, you know, we'll do another lap.
Well, he wants another lap. He's going to get it. Lucas Ziga, meanwhile, under pressure from Herzl then. But of course, this won't be a battle out on track. Herzl will inherit that 19th place after Ziga gets that 10-second penalty added to his race time. But we now make our way on through farm and on through village once again as Herzl there. Well, he showed some good pace in the early stages of this race. Oh, Lucas Ziga loses the back end. There's contact between the two of them there, and Lucas Ziga is collected by Herzl there. There was pretty much nowhere Herzl could go there. He'll just be hoping that he made it through there without a lot of front end damage. Spett and Boychev then both having 5-second penalties, but both going to fight hard for who's going to finish in front in this battle here. Boychev trying to find a way through Copse Corner is a brave one, but now he'll make his way on through Maggots and then through Beckett's and Chapel through this high speed section here, trying to take as much curb as possible, try and take as much speed through as he can, and on now through Beckett's on towards the Chapel curve. And you'll see there Boychev, I think he's going to get a better run down the hanger straight then as we head our way through, as he now has to try and tuck into the slipstream, but he realises he's a little too close to try and tuck into the slipstream. We're going to be running side by side, going through Club Corner then, with Spett on the inside. They make contact between the two of them going through Stowe Corner, and Saristo does well to avoid that one, although I think he didn't even brake for that one, didn't even flinch there. Meanwhile then, Luke Whitehead is making his way now through the final couple of corners. As Nico said, he probably could have lifted off to take the checkered flag, but he asserted his dominance. And that's Saristo now around at the final part of the track. Meanwhile then, Luke Whitehead is going to come towards the checkered flag to take the first win and the sprint race win here in the HyperX Open Series. A dominant display from the Ashtar Racing driver, and fully deserves that win. It's Tinko van der Velde in second place, showed strong pace in practice, qualified in 5th place and did well to get back onto 2nd place. Gully Atkins in 3rd place. A strong performance from him today, but he'll be kicking himself that he wasn't in the battle there with van der Velde. Then I know he'll come back even stronger in the feature race. But Boychev in 11th place then. I think he's actually got past Dean Vella as well as we make our way onwards towards the final couple of corners. No doubt the incident between himself and Spett will be investigated, and I'm sure it'll be investigated after the race by our stewarding team. For the moment though, he's in 11th place. He's made his way past Dean Vella. He's up into 11th place before that 5-second penalty he already had is going to be applied as he makes his way towards the line. So it's Dean Riley in 4th place, Jimmy Holm in 5th, with Sheldon Muscat in 6th, Jan-Niklas Erbrich in 7th place, with Gergely Kunshabo in 8th, Alex Leif in 9th, with David Ohak in 10th place, Boychev in 11th, Vela in 12th, Board in 13th place. Saristo, we saw have a spin towards the end of his final lap. He ends up in 14th place. Spet then in 15th. Mausharek will come across the line soon to take 16th spot in this race as the number 19 car comes across the line to finish there. That's Kirsten Abeyo who finishes a lap down at the very least as we await now Silver Pirbits across the line. So too Michael Perisada. Herzl in 19th place with Luca Ziga rounding off 20th place before his penalty is applied. But there is your race winner for the first race of the HyperX Open Series here. Luke Whitehead wins the sprint race and does so in style.
Absolutely, and just what a dominant display of him. Pole position and, well, literally just never lost the lead. Completely controlled the race and at the start maybe a little bit nervous about Carly Atkins just having a fast trigger finger on the pedal and also, you know, being quite, well, even ahead to a perfectly placed car, but the inside line at Cops in the rain, it's just so dominant. So, yeah, what a display from Luke Whitehead. Really well done.
And finishing more than 6 seconds up the road from anybody else, so just dominant in that one. And we had a good battle while it lasted for second place between two drivers who were really on top of their game. We haven't seen a lot of Van der Velde before here in World Pro Racing, but he's certainly made an impact battling with Carly Atkins.
Yeah, absolutely. Sidemax Motorworks now, I think, with one of their first appearances here, but of course already well known through the regions of RCI and the SimGrid, of course. So definitely not a surprise that he's, strong around here as well. But yeah, really a great way to make a first appearance.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a couple of incidents to talk about. Of course, our stewarding team have been pretty busy with lots of 5-second penalties, a couple of 10-second penalties as well as Herzl being awarded that penalty by the game itself for speeding, we think, in the pit lane. But whilst we unpackage all of that, we'll get ourselves ready for the feature race, which is coming up after this. Third then, the feature race of the HyperX Open Series, just minutes away then as we get ready for an hour's worth of racing. Of course, a mandatory pit stop still required, as well as that mandatory fuel being taken on board. But Nico, what we've seen in the sprint race then, quite a few penalties handed out, bit of a longer race this one, so hopefully we have drivers maybe having a second think about moves.
Oh yeah, for the 1 hour race I think people will think once or twice more about their moves, but still, you know, it's still a race, it's the same conditions. I think they will probably be a little bit more confident about their pace now and about the grip that these tires provide. And of course we will have a little bit less rain now, as far as I can see the forecast, so people will just start thinking, you know, maybe I can just attack a little bit more, but we'll have to see about that.
We will indeed. The wind's also picking up. We started the race where it was pretty still out there. Now the wind's picked up to 8 kilometers per hour and it's currently blowing in a southwesterly direction. So that might move the rain a little bit on from the circuit, but it is meant to rain for quite some time yet. Slightly easing off at about 10 minutes, but staying at that same rate for at least half an hour. So we'll have to find out and wait and see. And Nico, can Luke make it 2 out of 2? Or can the likes of Atkins or maybe even Herzl try and put their hat into the ring, then maybe even Van der Velde?
I think we'll have to wait and see, because quite honestly, for half an hour race, it's already mighty impressive to do a 6-second gap and, you know, just own it, basically. But I think the longer the race goes, of course, you have to think about strategy over, like, the refueling stuff a little bit more here. And, well, you'll also have to just think for, you know, the tires, you know, if they last as long as well, so
we'll wait and see what happens then as we're seconds away from getting the cars rolling onto the grid. Then let us know then if you're watching along on YouTube or Twitch. Let us know who you think the predictions are going to be. And of course, if you're watching us on ESTV, on Motorsport TV, on TVM Sport, we're getting ready then for an hour's worth of racing with one mandatory pit stop in a 10-minute pit window in the middle of the race. Then Luke Whitehead will lead the field onto the start-finish line once again in this rolling start. Carly Atkins on the left of your picture, Luke Whitehead on the right. Luke Whitehead as the inside line going in towards Copse Corner once again. Then Herzl will be hoping he can stick to the pit lane speed limiter this time around. He had a good chance of getting a good result. He's got another chance to try and do that this time around. Luke Whitehead leads the field then up towards the start finish line. The green flag waves and we are racing then. Who will get the better start? Atkins gets a flying start then round the outside through in towards Copse Corner. He takes the race lead and that's Whitehead struggling with rear end grip coming out of turn 1. One of the DJ racing cars has gone off the circuit then as he now tries to rejoin, but that is Luke Whitehead falling down to 3rd place. A fantastic start from Khalil Atkins, and that is Van der Velde from 5th place on the grid once again, shooting up there to 2nd place. A fantastic start from the Dutchman, as now they'll try and have to sit rep here for the next hour. David Ohak then falling down the order. He's down to 17th place. I think that was the car that found himself in a little bit of trouble then. One of the DJ racing cars did, and I'm only guessing that because we've got the other car, the 299 of Yannick Leserbrick. Actually might have been him because he's all the way now down at the back of the field. Meanwhile then Tinko van der Velde has to do a lot of job on his hands, and he has to defend from Luke Whitehead. Sheldon Muska in the Bentley behind, also closing in at a rate of knots. And we've got a car around, that's the number 63 car of Christian Mauscharek, who's around at Stowe, and I wonder then, he might have been battling within this order here. There's a lot of front end damage on the front of that DJ racing car of I think that's Jan Nicholas Erbrick, and it is. But end of the eventful, well, we're halfway through the first lap of this race. It's been eventful so far. David Ohak in 11th place then as he moves up the order, and now up to 10th place because we've got someone off on the outside of Abbey. It's the number 1 car, with that, which that's going to be Dean Riley, was running 6th place in this race.
Yeah, actually, just really interesting how quickly it all changes. But yeah, Riley sadly just, I think, put a foot wrong, or maybe even, well, more than just 1 foot wrong if he's already back to the pit lane. But what really stuck out to me at the start, Sheldon Muscat just making more than just 1 position, just instantly 2 positions, and able to stick with the back of Whitehead now. So really interesting here.
Really interesting indeed, as that's Corolla trying to find a move up the inside of the number 23 car. That silver pyramid round is outside as we now put the power back on to complete the first lap of racing. Unfortunately, Dean Riley has headed back to the pit lane, so he'll have to be held in his garage for a while whilst the car gets towed back, and then he'll be able to rejoin after that time has expired. Of course, if he chooses to come back in, as we've got Jan-Niklas Erbrich also into the pit lane. I'm not surprised. There was a lot of front-end damage to the front of that DJ racing car.
Yeah, just very, very difficult, of course, for them. And now we get a replay. Jan-Niklas Erbrich here now on the inside for this line, of course. Overall, gets a good run there. Then, oh no,
Dean Vella.
I feel
behind
for that.
him.
That exact same incident has happened to me before.
Yeah, and it's not great at all. I'm sure the stewards will be having a look at it, but is there any sort of way Dean Vella could have avoided that? Well, we didn't have the greatest angle. What would have been great is the on-boards. That's normally a good sign to see what happened there, but we'll leave that to the stewards for now. Michael Peresada in 17th place, Ashton Cox in 18th place, Corolla in 19th place. But the number 205 car is just making his way now down the hangar straight. I do feel for Corolla, actually. He's had 2 races here where 2 starts has not gone his way. But look at him. He's still out there pumping in the lap times. You love to see it.
Absolutely. And of course, well, one could already say that, you know, like the start has already gone a lot better for him this time, simply because he just didn't get a big hit like last time. But here we see it again now. Malcharek, actually. Into Stowe, and oh, that car is loose. That car is loosey-goosey, and just very unlucky to hit both cars there, but lucky that there wasn't a bigger hit there. So, you know, I can't stress it enough, you know, how lucky you have to be sometimes. Of course, you're infuriated, and, you know, you're just really angry, you're stressed, you have lost so much time, but it's still better than a full-on big hit.
Yeah, definitely. And if you can get away with a brush or maybe just a tap, then you can consider yourself very, very lucky in that regard, especially when you're facing sideways around one of the fastest corners on this track. Simon Spett then in 13th place, chasing down Lucas Ziege then for what will be 12th place. And Van der Velde has that rear view mirror filled with Luke Whitehead, the Ashtar racing car. So too of Sheldon Muscat. So too of Evalio Boychev. Simon Spett then was running in 8th place. He was running side by side with Dean Vella. Vella runs slightly off the track as they make their way through in towards Vale, defending the inside line. But he misses his braking point and runs into the side of Dean Riley then. So that was when Dean Riley was still in this race. That's why he's now down the order slightly. But we didn't quite see, there was something else that happened to Dean Riley then. Something that's made him come back into the pit lane.
Yeah, and, well, just misjudged your braking there. And, of course, if we have these situations here, you know, you have a couple of puddles on the inside of Vale, breaking into that. And, of course, well, we know the McLaren doesn't quite have the best ABS in these situations. And maybe just misjudging a braking point a little bit there. And, well, the most suffering party from that, of course, was Riley.
Yeah, absolutely. And something tells me he was collected again, because we did see that little dot on the minimap stranded out there for a second time. So it's not been a great day for him so far. I don't think we're going to see him back out onto track anytime soon, which is a real shame. But you can kind of understand that with 2 incidents so early on in the race, you just throw in the towel and that let what is be, I guess. Luke Whitehead then in a slipstream of Tinko van der Velde then as we make our way down the Wellington straight in towards Brooklands. Luke Whitehead looking for a move up the inside, but the door's not open just yet then. And this battle for the lead then stretching for right now over 5 cars. It's great to see right now Luke Whitehead right and well and truly in the thick of it.
Absolutely, and actually it's really, really fun to see as well. Whitehead is always just trying to stick the nose there, just trying to get Van der Velde upset a little bit. But the Sidemax driver is just really not caring whatsoever where Luke Whitehead's car is. He's just going to stick to his line and keep defending. And don't you just love to see that, honestly?
Yes, as we see then Boychev running slightly wide on the exit of Copse Corner, but he can bring himself back into contention as these cars are battling so much. Rain to ease off even more about 30 minutes later into this race, so we'll have to wait and see how that affects the driving and how this track is in about half hour's time. For now though, this rain is not going anywhere. It is going to be easing, but there's still going to be some sort of rain, looks like, throughout this race. As yeah, you can see that 5-car battle has broken away from everybody else. Herzl then in 6th place, 5.4 seconds behind the battle for the lead. Then as Van der Velde runs slightly wide on the exit of Kops, then Luke Whitehead senses an opportunity. He'll try and go round the outside at the beginning of the club corner section. It'll give him the inside line both times around through the final parts of this section here on towards the Hamilton straight. He's got the move done then. Luke Whitehead into 2nd place. Great stuff and a great pass on Van der Velde.
What a move, absolutely incredible. And really, Whitehead just seems to have that Ferrari all figured out, a car that not a lot of people get along with, but no matter where he is, he just seems to make that car work.
Oh, Sheldon Muscat almost running into the back then. He loses the back end then and finds himself into a half spin, trying to get the car pointing in the right direction again, and doing that's lost him another 2 positions, so he's now down into 7th place. And such a shame then, just looks like he carried a little bit too much speed going in towards Village then, and the rear end just over-rotated on him. Let's have a look at Dean Riley. So we've already seen one incident with Dean Riley. Let's have a look at another one. Herzl, I believe, was the car behind. Well, no, it's the McLaren then. I think that might be the number 54 of Vela, and Vela runs into him going through one of the fastest parts of the track then. No wonder Dean Riley is far from happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely follow him there. And now we have a look at, well, after we saw McLaren doing a little bit of a punt and run, we see a McLaren that's actually been doing, well, nothing illegal so far in this entire display, or has been more on the receiving end of punt and runs. And also the oldest car on the grid. So him is actually quite happy in 15th right now. Well, 16th now, but it's this classic case of, you know, just keep on driving and sometimes you just pick up freebies here and there.
Here we go then. Khalil Atkins doesn't get a great exit out of the final part of Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, and the leader's going to run side by side then. Luke Whitehead though will find himself on the outside line going through Stowe Corner then. You'll see then Atkins be able to take the inside line. He's got control of how ajar that door is as we now make our way through in towards Vale, on towards Club Corner section. Luke Whitehead has the inside line this time around. He'll try and shut the door, which he does, and Luke Whitehead takes the lead of this race then. Khalil Atkins down to 2nd place. He fought hard for that one, but now he's got to be careful because Van der Velde will be more than willing to try and take away that 2nd place away from the Mercedes. And just in the distance there you can see Boychov just in 4th place right now. He's got the front row seats we want for this battle for the lead.
Yeah, if anyone messes up, then it's basically just Boychev's choice to pick, you know, who he wants to take first. Getting really close there on Van der Velde, really big closing speed. And what I just noticed, actually, which I should have noticed earlier, is actually that Carly Atkins is still driving the old Mercedes, so the non-Evo package one, which is quite an interesting car choice as well.
Yeah, and he's currently in 2nd place though, so he clearly feels comfortable with the predecessor of the Mercedes then, currently running in 2nd place. As we see the riding still on board with Boychev then making our way through this final couple of corners in towards Luffield we go. Corolla meanwhile looks like that's going to be a stop and go penalty. That is for pit speed limit then, so that is awarded automatically if you speed in the pit lane. He is currently in the pits now. I'm slightly concerned we might not be seeing the rest of him, so we could be down to 18 runners here with Perisada being the last of the runners. There is David Ohak then, currently 10th place. He's got Konshaba right behind. He's also got Ziga and Spet for company as well in this battle for 10th place as they now head up their way through this long right-hander of Kops Corner. Such a fantastic corner, a lot of history behind Kops Corner, and really when you think about it, one of the only corners on this track that hasn't been modified too heavily over the years since the first Formula 1 championship race all the way back in 1950. The rest of the circuit has had changes somewhat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you just look at the overall track map over there, Kops Corner has basically been staying. Of course, the tarmac runoff has been added, and you know they don't have this humongous curb from the 50s and 60s up there anymore. But the corner geometry, so to say, it stayed the same the entire way. And when you look at the comparison here, as we see on the track now with Lukas Ziga going past Simon Speth, Stowe Corner, it used to be way wider. It used to go a lot further to the left, as we see here, because there wasn't the Vale chicane here. It just immediately went into the Club Corner, which was a lot wider as well and just way, way faster back in the day.
Lucas Ziga then 12th place right now. He's got Conchabo in his sights. That will be for 11th place, but they're now joining on to this battle then with, I think that's Alex Leaf in 9th place. So they're really doing well to close in on the car ahead as they now make their way in towards Village then for the 6th time in this race. Leaf then slightly falling behind Surrey Stowe then for 8th place, but in the meantime he'll have his rear view mirrors filled with that Bentley then, that DJ Racing, that unmistakable livery of a DJ Racing car. It's David Ohak in the number 13 car, and you'll see some drivers are so wary of the number 13, but David Ohak clearly feels that is his number. Atkins then is finding and feeling that pressure from Van der Velde going all the way through Luffield. Fair play to Atkins though, he held onto that car very well, held onto that pressure very well indeed as well. We head our way up towards Copse for the 7th time in this race. Whitehead leading the way by 2.2 seconds. It's Atkins in 2nd place. Van der Velde riding on board with a twitch of oversteer on the exit of Copse then. Really the least way, the worst opportunity to have a bit of oversteer there is going through one of the fastest corners on this track, through Copse Corner, because there's not a lot of forgiveness in this car if you run just a little bit too fast.
Yeah, quite. And as we see here now, that is quite the perfect example, as you just mentioned. Of course, there's the tarmac runoff, as we keep saying, but still a very frightening feeling just to feel the car slipping a little bit away from you, and you just can't really stop it from happening. But now, on board, well, not quite on board, but our eyes are on Callie Atkins. Now on the inside, where he got passed by Whitehead a couple laps ago, now trying to defend from Van der Velde and actually doing a quite good job of it. So actually learning actively while he's driving.
Yeah, and that's going to be the important thing. That is an important thing as you're driving, is trying to find out how your opponent attacks, how your opponent defends. So Atkins and Van der Velde will be studying each other's driving styles whilst trying to focus on keeping their cars on the track. Then Boychev in the background as well, just seeing what he can do for now. He's keeping up with these two, and he knows the more these two battle, the more time they'll lose, and the closer he'll be able to get to trying to find a move past Van der Velde, then taking a slightly different line to Atkins going in towards the loop. Now through Aintree we go, and on towards the Wellington Straight. Is there a chance here for Van der Velde to try and find a way through? He looks a little bit too far away now as he just tries to fill those Mercedes mirrors with a bit of McLaren. Going now, braking in towards Brooklands and on towards Luffield and Woodcote once again in this race. But Atkins doing well enough to hold on to 2nd place. Van der Velde is making it difficult for him. And we've also got Boychev in the number 64 trying to just see what happens, and we're just under a quarter of the way through this race. Luke Whitehead is still your race leader, although he did have to recover after falling back to 3rd place on the very first lap. News from the stewarding room then, the number 54 car is going to be receiving a drive-through penalty, so that's Dean Vella on the number 299 of Jan Nicholas Erbrich then. Drive-through penalty for an avoidable collision, so that will be applied to him. Let's have a replay here. So this is Oscar Saristo then, so this was early on in the race. This is someone we saw have a bit of an eventful end to his last race. Let's have a look and see. Over rotates. Oh, going through. That is going through club corner section. Oh, absolutely collected there. 3-4 cars involved there, and the number 24 car. I'm trying to think who that is. It was Conchabo. You're absolutely right. Just absolutely nowhere he could go in that one, and that's just one of those really unfortunate incidents.
Yeah, and then we have another penalty, lap 22 on number 1. That's 5-second penalty for a dive bomb, and that's even. That's Boychev just turning Van der Velde around, just a bit too optimistic. And I mentioned this before, he just gets so close, so much confidence on his braking, so much confidence on his spatial awareness, but maybe just a little bit too overconfident now.
Yeah, so he's up into 3rd place for now, but no doubt the stewards will be having a look at that one. Another penalty as well for the number 22 car. That Simon Spett is going to get a 5-second penalty for a dive bomb on the number 1 car, which is Dean Riley, who has since retired from this race. So that'll be added to his race time for sure. David Ohak then, that means he's up into 8th place with a little bit of incident ahead of him as he just tries to break away then from Alex Leif. In fact, that's a move he's just made. Spet then on board, battle for 10th place as they try and fight the cars then going in towards the loop, trying to find the limits of grip as they find their way through, just trying to make sure they don't spit up the rear tyres. The number 19 car of Kirsten Ebeya, 10-second penalty for an avoidable collision on Marcus Corolla. So 10 seconds will be added to the number 19's time. Meanwhile then, Spet then, what a view that is. That is some air then. And I really do feel for Conchaba there. Where on earth was he supposed to go? You had a car spin like that right in front of you on the racing line. Yes, there were yellow flags, but you can't expect a car to be planted in the middle like that at, at Club Corner.
Yeah, of course. And he just got barely, he just got barely touched, which just got him, well, perfectly sideways for the hit. That was the most energy he could have gotten. Luckily, in case for both drivers, we are in a simulation, of course, but because in real life that would have been a very nasty hit.
Yes, Corolla then is going to get a 15-second penalty for an unsafe rejoin and causing an avoidable collision. I think he's since retired from that one, but that will surely be carried over in the race report by the stewards in this one. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Dean Vella, meanwhile, is pulling off to the right-hand side. He's dropped to 6th place now as he makes his way now in through these next couple of corners, then going through the club quarter section. Spet then trying to find a move then, but Ashton Cox has gone around his outside and is now up into 11th place. Next car for him will be Chris Bourne.
Yeah, Chris Bourne, overall, a guy who hasn't had the best luck in the sprint race, but, he's a guy who just tries to stay calm, tries to just stay out of trouble. And, well, as we all know, sometimes slow and steady does win the race. So Chris Bourne definitely not taking one of the silly approaches. He's taking it quite seriously and just tries to stay out of trouble instead of just trying to risk stuff. Especially with the next couple cars behind him. Speff, for example, having a 5-second penalty, and Cox, of course, well, from the last race, he had a tendency to butt heads a little bit. So Bourne just trying to stay calm instead of trouble, and generally never a bad idea.
Never a bad idea, and normally gets you a pretty decent result at the end of it as well. As we see then, the rain is going to be getting lighter and lighter throughout this race, but still we are forecast to have rain throughout this race. At the moment then, Luke Whitehead leading by 7 seconds, and that was the battling between Atkins and Van der Velde that opened up that gap so much. We're seeing it at a gap that was formed after half an hour. We've raced for 20 minutes so far, and of course that involved a pit stop as well. So it just shows you there that battling is a really, really tough thing to do. When you're so locked in that battle, you sort of forget about the race leader when you're battling for second place. You both want second place, you both want that chance to fight the race leader, but in doing that, you actually lose touch and lose ground with the race leader. We're going side by side here then, going through in towards the first part of this high-speed section through Maggots then, and Ashton Cox has to back out of that one. He was the one that blinked through there. No surprises at all, because he was just about had that front splitter alongside, but knew the door was always going to close through there. Wise to back out of it and just fight another day.
Yeah, indeed, and of course, Chris Bourne, he has some position still to gain. Dean Vella, after all, has this drive-through penalty left. So I think if he just keeps up his regular pace right now, because Ashton Cox doesn't seem to be that incredibly much faster. He's just constantly looking and looking, trying to put Bourne under pressure. I think if Bourne can just stay calm and keep doing what he's doing right now, he's going to be quite good up until the pit stop window, which will open in just under 5 minutes.
Absolutely, as you can see that Ashton Cox right on the back of Chris Bourne, then just trying to fill those mirrors with a little bit of Ashtoire. Making our way now in through Abbey, then through Farm Curve, as you can see there. Just riding aboard with this Ferrari. How much the drivers are having to overcorrect and correct the car going in through these high-speed corners. As that's Chris Bourne finding a little bit of trouble going through Village then. Ashton Cox almost joining him in sympathy there as they battle hard then going through the loop. Ashton Cox tries to get the inside line then going in towards Aintree. Has he got enough of the car alongside? Yes, he has. Grabs the inside line. They're still going to run side by side down the Wellington Straight then on towards Brooklands, and once again Ashton Cox has the inside line in towards Brooklands then, so in theory he's got the advantage, and he does take away 10th place away from Chris Bourne then. Dean Vella into the pits to serve his drive-through penalty. That'll drop him down the order. 50 kilometers per hour in that pit lane. It'll go on forever, that one.
Absolutely, and well, Cox, just thinking, well, maybe the gentle approach hasn't quite worked, So we know just Ashton Cox, one of the drivers in the rain, of course, as well, because we saw him first time very, very big in the Rainmaster at Barcelona. We had a very impressive performance. He's always a guy who takes it a bit slow at the start and then gets harder the longer it goes on. So Cox really quite interesting driving style there, and hopefully, Dean Vella, and who's here now out of the pit lane, just came out right in front of Simon Speth, who he will definitely not get passed by, because Speth has quite a lot of damage from that crash, which robbed us of one of our Nissans. Yeah, just carrying on now and trying to make the best out of it.
There's Luke Whitehead then, your race leader so far. 2:03.7 is his fastest lap so far. That was set on the very last lap he did. So you can tell then conditions are improving, although the wind is starting to pick up. It's now up to 10 kilometers per hour. It was 8 kilometers per hour at the start of this race. So it's getting a little bit windier out here. And the effect that the wind has, especially where it blows across the circuit then, has a profound effect on these cars.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though they don't have 2 or 3 tons of downforce, like Formula 1 cars, like prototypes, so those wind gusts wouldn't make that much difference, but they still have quite a lot of downforce. Around 800, 900 kilos sometimes, and, well, at top speed, of course. But either way, when you have just randomly a little bit more wind gusts just coming straight for you, let's say at Cops, you have 10 kilometers of wind coming at you, then the downforce will, of course, increase by 10 kilometers as well. So it's just quite difficult to always adjust to that. But, of course, the more important thing with the wind speed here right now is, of course, our clouds, our weather, and generally in ACC, it's always an indicator that a lot of weather changes coming our way when the wind goes up to 10, when it goes up to 20 kilometers an hour.
There's David Ohack then currently in 7th place, and we saw there Dean Vella has got the position then on Chris Bourne. He's moved up to 10th place now, and he finds himself 2.1 seconds behind the next car. Calvin Herzl then is under pressure from Sheldon Muscat then. This is the battle for 4th place, and look at that then. Muscat almost onto the grass then. Herzl not taking any prisoners there, and in fact Muscat tries to go round the long way at Stowe Corner. He's going to be left some room, is he? He goes off the track slightly as he now grabs the inside line going in towards Club Corner section, but it'll be on the outside going through the last parts of it and onto the Hamilton straight then, but Herzl gets the door slammed in his face, and Muscat then moves now up into 4th place. Firm battling from both of them, but fair in the end, and Muscat comes out on top.
Absolutely, that was the perfect example of elbows out but not contact. Very, very good drive from both of them there, and quite honestly, I was really convinced that we'd have at least like 1 or 2 little bunts there, but nothing. Absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. There's Kirsten Abaya then in 11th place. Obviously a 10-second penalty to his name so far, with Spet behind him in 12th place, as Boychev is in 3rd place at this moment in time, as Muscat now moves up into 4th place as the standings update that one. There goes Kirsten Bayer then flying his way now through in towards Abbey, then towards Farm Corner and on towards Village once again as you slow the cars down. Pit window is now open and every single driver is probably the furthest away from the pits as you possibly can be. Luke Whitehead is certainly that, as we see Perez Sada come into the pit lane, and he's not taking any further part. He's left, unfortunately. He did have a couple of problems in that last lap, so he might have just called it a day and decided to get into the dry. Chris Bourne then, let's see what happened to him going through Maggots and Beckett. You could already see the car was out of shape going through Maggots there. Around she goes. And luckily going off the track then to rejoin at a safe pace. But just as it was turning into Maggots, you could tell there that that car was not right. Something was going to go awry.
Yeah, just a little bit off the line there. And the problem with Maggots and Beckett is all just the general, thing that you have to pay attention to. You just have to be perfectly on the line from start to finish. Or just, follow that perfect rhythm that these corners have. It's one of the rare examples nowadays in modern racetracks where you just have a proper rhythm in it, because a lot of times it's, 90-degree corner, 90-degree corner and all that stuff, the what people call tilkedromes and stuff. But Maggots and Beckett being a very, very traditional section of corners still, it just gets slowly tighter and tighter. You just really have to stay in the rhythm and just perfectly balance it through. It's basically like ballerina dancing.
Do you know what? They say to prepare for everything in the commentary box. I was not expecting comparing racing to ballet dancing at any point in this race at all. But there you go. That's the beauty of commentary sometimes. At the moment, then Luke Whitehead in the lead of this race. Kali Atkins in second place. Boyshev in third. And of course, we got the sprint race earlier on, so we've had our results from that one. As we saw Luke Whitehead take the full 18 points for the sprint race. We get into the feature race where the top 15 score points. So as long as you make it to the line now, you're going to score some points in this race. With an exception though, those that scored a podium in the previous race will get a points deduction. So that means that it's a sort of it's the equivalent of the ballast penalty, if you like. So if Luke Whitehead wins this race, he would have scored 25 points, but he's already had a podium so far today, so he'd actually score 22. He'd still score the maximum points available to him, and at that point, to anybody else.
Yeah, so overall, everything going in Whitehead's way, so even the systems that are in place for this, not really able to stop him, and, well, neither does, it seems that neither is anyone on track, you know, just able to stop him. He's just in a league of his own right now. 12 seconds, I mean, I would wager to guess by the time Kali Atkins crosses the line. Yeah, there we are, over 13 seconds. Now ahead and now actually catching up to our back markers.
Yes, as he now tiptoes his way through Club Corner section, onwards then towards the Hamilton Straight and then towards Abbey as the cars file their way through. And we're about halfway through our pit window. Only 3 cars have been to the pits so far in this race, Herzl, Bourne and Spett. Of course, the drivers still have 6 minutes of the window left open, but when you compare that to how long the lap is around here, over 2 minutes, then you're looking at another 2 laps before you really have to start thinking about when to pit, as Luke Whitehead gets to move on Chris Bourne. That's to put a lap on the 118 car as he now finds his way through Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight. There's Spett then, who gets well off the track then to let some cars through. Of course, the blue flags will be waved in his general direction. He's currently 13th of the runners right now as he just tiptoes his way through. Oh, that's a big moment there. I think that was the who is that? I think that's Van der Velde. Yeah, the number 66, really struggling with grip out there.
Yeah, I think maybe he has overpushed his tires a little bit. Tire tearing and of course...
Oh, actually...
What is it called? Graining. There we are. That's actually a thing of this as well, so...
I'll tell you something, actually. I've noticed that the rain has got lighter and lighter, but the track is now damp. It was wet. I wonder if that's going to have an effect on these tyres and how much grip these drivers have out there. They're going to have that in the back of their mind.
Well, the thing is, like, in damp conditions, the wet tires are still the fastest. But I would wager to guess that the guys on track right now, simply because in damp conditions the tires start to heat up extremely already. I'd wager to bet that these guys are probably waiting as long as it takes, you know, as long as possible, to see if maybe it'll go down to greasy, because at that point it's faster and also safer to go on dry tires, just so they just don't get these overheating wet tires anymore. At that point, you know, of course you would have a longer pit stop because of tire change, but it would be a lot safer to carry on that way.
So we will have to wait and see how that goes. Ashton Cox then comes into the pit lane then to make his mandatory stop. And I wonder actually if for that reason drivers are just trying to wait it out here and see what the track does, how the weather impacts the track as late as they possibly can, and that might give them a chance to change their tyres within the mandatory pit stop, saves them from making 2 as Ashton Cox then rejoins just ahead of Alex Leaf there. Left it late for sure, however he gets ahead and rejoins ahead for sure. Luke Whitehead then still in the lead of this race, and I'm actually being corrected by the birthday boy behind the scenes, Nathan Mifsud. The point deduction occurs from the previous event, so last event Luke didn't have any podiums, so he doesn't get that success penalty of a point deduction, so he's going to score full points today as long as he keeps this car on the road for the next half an hour.
Yeah, so the perfect race quite indeed for him. And Ashton Cox, H3 driver, as we speak of Luke Whitehead, of course, also an H3 driver. Ashton Cox coming out right in front of Leaf, but sadly, once again, speeding in pit lane. And, well, that's just going to sting a bit, isn't it?
It is. It is. It really is. And it's not been his day whatsoever. And that stop and go 30-second penalty will just well, be the cherry on top of a cake he never really wanted. Luke Whitehead then 3.5 minutes of the pit window left open in this race. Of course, they have to make a mandatory stop here, regardless of whether they change tyres or not. And yeah, you can see damp conditions so far as the rain has eased off and is due to ease off for the remainder of the race. But the important thing is for the drivers to note is that it's probably going to rain for the rest of this race, just that it'll ease off.
Yeah, and that is going to be the difficult thing to gauge now. I think we see, yeah, there we are. Carly Atkins just finished his pit stop. He's going to head out now. So from how short he was in the pit lane, I'd say he probably went with the same strategy as everyone has been until now. But let's just say it like this. If Van der Velde just stays out a little bit longer, and then it changes to greasy, he has that perfect opportunity to change tires. Of course, on, you know, slicks it's quite difficult, but it is still not as difficult as these really, really overheated and completely overpressured wet tires are in greasy conditions. Simply because you have normally the optimum temperature around, well, with dry tires at least, you know, around like 80 to 90 degrees. These wet tires in greasy get easily up over 100 degrees, and at that point you're driving on ice.
Yeah, the tyres are melting away at that point, surely. But yeah, as you say, 100 degrees is not great for any tyre to perform well in, let alone these wet weather tyres that is designed for lower track temperatures. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes. But the thing for Van der Velde, as we ride on board with him, as he makes his way through Aintree and on towards the Wellington Straight, he kind of has to pit this lap. He's got no other choice, so it's now or never. It's now or receive a penalty, more accurately. The race leader Luke Whitehead into the pit then as he leaves it as late as he possibly can. No change in the weather though, so it looks like it's not going to be a tyre change for him, at least track condition, I mean, not the weather. We've seen it ease up in the rain very slightly over this entire hour-long race so far. Boychev into the pits then. Will he slow that car down in time? I don't think he did, you know. That's very, very tight. Sheldon Muscat also coming in very hot into the pit lane. Will be interesting to see because they don't get the penalty until they've passed the pit lane exit line. Luke Whitehead leaving the pit lane. Interesting. I saw that car come off the jacks then. Wonder what's going on there.
Yeah, I think that's just a standard thing though. Even if you don't change the tires, that it has this animation of coming off the jacks or just generally being put up, simply because the procedure for these pit stops is simply just coming into the pits, getting put up after you turn off the engine, and then, you know, at the end of the service you just get put off the jacks again. But quite interesting. Like, I don't think that he changed the tires. The gap would speak for that as well. But Boychev actually stood there for quite some time. I think he's actually changed tires.
Interesting. I wonder how that's all going to play out in the long run. We've still got 25 minutes of this race left to run, and there is your race leader in Luke Whitehead making his way now. And, well, tiptoeing is a good word for it through Stowe and onwards then towards the club corner section. 9.8 seconds is the lead now. So Calais Atkins has done well to size that gap down. Now that he's focused on his own pace at the moment and not fighting with Van der Velde, he's able to close in gradually on Luke Whitehead as pit window is now closed. Silver Pimit's currently in the pit lane. He entered the pit lane before the pit window closed, so he's able to service stop, and he actually just about rejoins now in 7th place, I believe that will be. Possibly, no, actually 9th place, because he rejoins in front of Kirsten Abeya. But Atkins right now looking to try and close in on Luke Whitehead as much as possible, and yeah, we might have been slightly robbed of a great battle for 2nd place between Atkins and Van der Velde, but never say never. We've still got 24.5 minutes of this race left.
Absolutely, and I think one of the important things to see here as well now is Atkins, of course. He got the gap down quite nicely over the pit stop, probably starting with a heavier car than Whitehead as well. But the thing as well is that Van der Velde, he barely even got up the jacks. Like, he just got dropped basically as soon as he got put on. So just a few little splashes of fuel coming into that car. And now he's just immediately 5.4 seconds away. I think Carly Atkins, if anything, will have to look at the back, because Van der Velde, the Sidemax driver, will definitely be flying down the track now in maximum attack mode.
0.01 second last time I checked in with it. But Boyachev looks like he's driving away and now trying to find a way to catch up to Sheldon Muscat up ahead, as we've got 2 cars battling ahead of Tinko van der Velde. It's one of the cars is the number 22 car of Spet, and I think the number 6 car is Carly Atkins, who's putting a lap on the number 22 car, and that confirms it there. So Spet then in 13th place, just trying to make sure he keeps out of trouble for now, especially with the leaders coming through. At the moment though, Luke Whitehead is still extending his advantage at the top of the order. 11 seconds is the gap now, so that gap that was coming down from Khalil Atkins is now slowly increasing once again.
Yeah, but it's really just, I don't know. I don't know how to say it other than Whitehead just knows what he's doing in that Ferrari at this track, and somehow in the rain, even though the Ferrari shouldn't have that much of an upper hand here. So I think it's literally just, Whitehead being in the absolute zone right now and just no one else being able to match his pace quite right now.
There is Luke Whitehead, your race leader, coming on to start the 19th lap of this race with just under 22 minutes to go. And as you say there, Nico, he looks in full control. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what he needs to do. 12.1 is the gap between himself and Khalil Atkins, as he now finds his way now through Maggots and then through in towards Beckett and Chapel later on in this series of corners before he takes us then onto the hangar straight. All the cars at the moment seem pretty evenly spread out at the moment, so it's just a case now of battling the elements with these drivers now. The rain is expected to get lighter throughout the rest of this race. Currently the track is damp, so there's no need right now to change tyres. If it gets any lighter and the track gets any drier, well then, that'll throw the cat amongst the pigeons, that's for sure.
Absolutely, but I also think just generally, people will have to start watching out. If they don't cool their tires, and you can see that actually Sheldon Muscat in the back there, he's actually driving on a line where you normally wouldn't drive when you're just driving in the wet. So he's already searching for puddles. So look at that, going completely to the inside there, to the left of the track, then rejoining the racing line. He's completely cooling his tires. So some concerns about tire temperature are already present there. Let's see if he does it on the Hamilton straight as well. No, actually doesn't do it. But either way, it's just... well, of course, it's ever-growing concerns, because you just want these tires to last to the end of the race.
You do indeed. You just want a nice, easy run to the end of the race as Muscat then dives down the inside of Spet then, who moves out of the way to let Muscat through. Of course, to put a lap on him, but Muscat was not going to take any prisoners going in towards the right-hander there of Village, as he now makes his way on towards the Wellington Straight. And the gap between himself and Van der Velde at the moment is 3.2 seconds. And as you rightfully said then, Nico, that Muscat is just taking some lines that you wouldn't normally take to cool those tyres and just try and make sure that water gets onto them. So maybe an inclination then that Sheldon Muscat is starting to struggle in these conditions.
Yeah, absolutely, but, well, it's always lovingly called the Boatly, but ironically enough, it doesn't seem to handle the water here that well. Or actually, so to say, it doesn't really handle it too well when the water lets off, so yeah.
So it is a Boatly then. There you go. We've learned something new. It doesn't do well.
The more efficient it gets.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But we've seen Sheldon Muscat is very handy behind the Bentley as he now makes his way through in towards Maggots, now through Beckett and then through Chapel Curve, onwards towards the hangar straight. Just under 20 minutes of this race to go then, and Luke Whitehead has a comfortable margin over Khalil Atkins, 13.2 seconds. Van der Velde starting to try and close in, but has he got enough time at that current rate to close in for a battle for second place? Going to be close because it's a couple of tenths every single lap. I have to wait and see. We'll all have to wait and see whether he can close in at the moment. But there is Van der Velde then, who has shown some great pace all day today. Second fastest in the practice session, qualified in 4th place. And but for an early instant in this race, we could have had a mighty battle for second place. I still wouldn't rule it out though.
Yeah, absolutely. The big question will be, it's very obvious that Tinko van der Velde is pushing like a madman right now, so I don't think really he just cares that it's even raining. He's just pushing away. He's just completely sacrificing his tires. The thing is, like, what will run out first, his pace or the tires? Well, to be fair, like what will run out first is the gap or the tires. So yeah.
Yes, but at the moment he's not caring too much about that because he's trying to cut the margin down as much as possible. Could see a battle for second place. Let's see how Van der Velde is able to try and close that gap. Sheldon Muscat as well, fourth place at the moment. They're just on the bubble of making sure they can try and catch up at the moment. Boychev has pulled away from David Ohak. That gap is now just under 3 seconds there, and it's been building and building lap after lap. Alex Leaf then in 7th place. He's definitely in a race of his own. So too is Dean Vella, Silver Pyramids, Kirsten Ebeya, Chris Bourne, also all in races of their own. Ashton Cox 4.1 seconds behind Chris Bourne for the battle for 11th place. Still a chance for him to try and close in, but he's got to get those laps in now because he hasn't got long to try and catch the back of Chris Bourne, let alone try and make a move stick.
Yeah, but yeah. What can I say? Chris Bourne, he's been, well, through all his troubles, he still kept the slow and steady approach, and at the moment he's still finding himself in front of Ashton Cox, who made his way past him earlier. So to say, even with that spin that he had in Maggots and Beckett's, he's done everything right so far, and the question will be now, if he can hold that 4-second gap until the time runs out.
And we'll have to wait and see because Cox has now put that under 4 seconds, 3.9 seconds to be exact. But, you never know. He could have to have a fight on his hands. There's still 16 minutes of this race left to time. Luke Whitehead still leading the way and ever increasing his gap. I mean, we need to talk about Luke Whitehead. 0.7 of a second in that qualifying session, I think, set the tone for what races he could have had. Didn't make it all too easy for himself because his start in this race in particular wasn't a good one. He dropped to 3rd and then just over the next couple of laps managed to close down the gaps ahead and make the move stick as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And meanwhile, you can't help but think, simply because Atkins was able to catch up around 3 to 4 seconds in the pit stop, if Van der Velde had been able to hold Whitehead just a little bit longer up until the pit window, how would the situation would have looked then? Because, obvious by himself, he is just a force to be reckoned with, Whitehead that is. So he's just, slowly just driving away from them. But in the situation that he would have had to fight them, where he can't unfold his full pace, where he can't constantly rely on the excellent downforce of the Ferrari, and the tires slowly get eaten away a little bit more, and he has that longer stop time, would it have looked the same? So he just really got, well, not even lucky, simply because he just made 2 very nice and clean moves past Van der Velde and past Atkins. But yeah, one can't help but wonder.
Dean Vella, though, is closing on Alex Leaf. That's for 7th place. The gap's 2.4 seconds. There he is then leaving Luffield, going through this long right-hander of Woodcote before you cross the start-finish line and start another lap then. As Dean Vella, currently 8th place, trying to close in on Alex Leaf then. You can see here that the track is starting to have that standing water and starting to have that little bit of moisture on the track, just clear slightly, still damp out there, but as we've seen over this past 45 minutes or so, the track temperature has dropped dramatically. We were looking in the low 20s for track temperature. It's now currently 19 degrees out there on track, 16 degrees air temperature, and the wind has slightly picked up yet again. Now it's 11 kilometers per hour gusts. So these drivers are having to cope with these tricky conditions. Still raining out there though, so you would think that it would stay damp for a little bit longer. But Dean Vella, we've been talking about how some drivers will be trying to look after their tyres. It looks like Dean Vella here is doing everything but that.
At the moment, I'd be guessing every one of them is just asking their race engineers to do rain dances, simply because it's getting, the damper it gets, the hotter the tire temperatures get. And I did see a yellow flag earlier. There was Kirsten Ebeya through turn 1, through Copse. Having a not so swell time and now being within the grasp of Chris Bourne, actually.
Yes, and Ashton Cox is also joining onto this battle as well. So we've got a battle for 10th place on our hands in the last 13 minutes of this race, as they're all on the similar bit of track. Ashton Cox to the right-hand side of the track then to try and cool the tyres down with a little bit of what remains of that standing water. Chris Bourne then in the XR Virtual Motorsport Ferrari, the number 118. trying to find a way past Kirsten Abea, who made that mistake earlier on. But knowing Abea, then he's got the pace to pull away again. However, with that mistake earlier on in the race, then in Copse, is that a sign that maybe he's starting to struggle with these conditions as well?
Well, if he isn't, his tyres might be. So, yeah, I mean.
Oh, he's done it again.
There we are.
He's off again. Going through Abbey, then has to rejoin going through Farm, which is not a great place to rejoin at the best of times. And he falls down to 12th place then. So Kirsten Abea definitely struggling in these conditions. Meanwhile, Chris Bourne having to defend hard then from Ashton Cox, which is now for 10th place. Cox then gets a move up the inside. He's got the inside line through Aintree, and he'll take the position away down the Wellington Straight. Might be an opportunity here for Chris Bourne to have a move back going in towards this long left-hander of Brooklands. He certainly puts the car, positions the car up the inside, maybe trying to put Ashton Cox off a little bit, but Cox gets 10th place, and in the space of a couple of corners he went from 12th place up into 10th.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, actually, if I recall correctly, this was basically a carbon copy of the first time he got past Bourne, so you know, what has been proven as working, you know, don't change a running system. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What works before will probably work again. And now he's up into 10th place. Unfortunately for him, though, that might be where the momentum stops, because the next car is Silver Pyramids, 26 seconds up the road. Dean Vella has really closed in to the back of Alex Leaf then for that battle for 7th place. There they go then through Farm. Onwards now they go towards the right-hander of Village. And Leaf gets a little bit deep into Village. Now he'll be on the inside line for the loop, but Dean Vella will try and move round the outside, get the better exit speed out of the corner. If he can get the power down, he's looking for a move up the inside of Aintree, and the Nissan does give him the room then. Are they going to run side by side? No, Dean Vella tucks back into the toe of the Nissan, as he's looking for a move up the inside, going in towards the left-hander here of Brooklands. They've got the back marker of Spett ahead of them, who gets well out of the way, well off track as well, as they make their way through Luffield, tiptoeing the way through on these wet weather tyres that are certainly showing the signs that they are warming up very nicely, very toastedly, and maybe a little bit too much for some drivers. But Dean Vella got that Nissan ahead of him. Battle for 7th place is well and truly on, heading through Copse Corner. Can Dean Vella try and find a way past? Meanwhile, then, battle for 11th place carries on. Chris Bourne having to defend from Kirsten Abea. Was running in 10th place, but 2 mistakes in 1 lap, possibly attributed to the overheating wet weather tyres that Abea has on his car. Maybe struggling more than most in these tricky conditions. I mean, it is still raining out there, but the problem is that there's less and less standing water, so that just means that the wet weather tyres are not being able to be cooled as much, as Abea almost into the back of Chris Bourne, then has to slightly turn the wheel right then to make sure he doesn't clip the back end of Chris Bourne, as they now head their way through Luffield. Onwards then, back onto the power, through Woodcote they go. And at the moment, Kirsten Abea is just biding his time at the moment, trying to see if he can find a way past Chris Bourne in these tricky conditions, which means the track is slightly getting drier and drier, with the rain easing off more and more.
Yeah, we just saw it. Bourne also just going off the line now to try and cool the tyres a little bit more. Also having, is that an indicator or is that the rain light? I think that's just the rain light flicking there. But yeah, Abea probably should be cooling his tyres as well, but seems to be seeing red right now, even though the Ferrari is not quite in its traditional color. I think Abea just really needs to watch his situation now. You saw earlier how he just was not having any grip whatsoever on the brakes. Now he just has to play it safe, try to play it cool, and just look and try to get Chris Bourne to overdrive his car.
Yeah, he's got to be cool, calm and committed in making this move stick. He'll be frustrated that he's had to give up 10th place for those 2 mistakes, but now he'll be certainly back onto that mindset of grabbing another position. Chris Bourne's Ferrari is one to try and get then, and Bourne then moves to the left-hand side of your screen, back onto the racing line to just try and cool those tyres in any stretch of the imagination. Just try and get some sort of coolness in them. And I think the Ferrari is getting a little bit of a tank slapper going through Abbey there. Did he manage to gather that car up? Dean Vella, meanwhile, has come into the pits Now I wonder, is that going to be a chance for him to get onto a different set of tyres? Otherwise, I don't think he would have pitted otherwise. But there goes Luke Whitehead, who's now put a lap on Kirsten Abeya as they now make their way now down the Wellington Straight. Interesting then, Dean Vella into the pits. He's got 24 seconds over Silver Pyramids. He clearly thinks maybe something on the cards.
Yeah, maybe. But either way, I don't think that... It's difficult to judge, I'd say. It's definitely difficult to judge simply because the change of tires just takes so much time. We can see now Ashton Cox, Chris Bourne and Abeya now driving past there, so Vella will have to get past them again. And then there's also Luke Whitehead, obviously, the leader, who's now currently lapping these two guys. And quite frankly, I don't think that pitting for new tires was necessary normally, but Vella must have had quite a lot of issues then.
Yeah, he must have done, otherwise he wouldn't have come into the pit. So he rejoins then in 12th place as he now tries to find his way through Maggots, now in towards Beckett's and then in towards Chapel. Sheldon Muscat then in 4th place. Haven't spoken a lot about him since he got to move past the back marker, but he's currently still in 4th place. 7.5 seconds separates him and Tinko van der Velde. Although I have to say, Tinko has done well. He's sized the gap down to 2.7 seconds. He's within touching distance of Khalil Atkins. Unfortunately for him, with the time left on the clock and the rate he's closing in, it's not going to be enough to size up a move, a potential move. Although I'd be very happily proven wrong if that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely, but you just constantly have to look here. Only 2 seconds now, it's 6 minutes to go, so I'd say... Considering their position, considering where Luke Whitehead is, definitely 3 more laps to go. So he's going to have to gain 2 seconds and an overtake in 3 laps around these conditions, where everyone's starting to struggle with tire temperature. So I think it'll definitely be tricky for both of them.
It will be indeed. It'll be tricky as well for Chris Bourne because he's got Kirsten Abeya right on the back of him. This battle for 10th place making our way now up towards Brooklands, the flowing left-hander then, and Abeya still can't find a way through. Chris Bourne driving the widest Ferrari Silverstone's ever seen, but they're going to run side by side as they make their way through Luffield. Then Kirsten Abeya taking a wider entry to try and get the apex and in theory get the power down earlier. Chris Bourne struggling for grip going through Luffield, then going through Woodcote we go and on towards the start finish straight, and once again Chris Bourne does just enough to stay ahead of Kirsten Abeya. And for Abeya here, this is going to be hugely frustrating. He knows he's got the pace, but he can't find the move just yet.
Yeah, not just yet, but of course for him there's, well, for both of them there's still 3 more laps to go. And I think right now the really good thing to do would just be patient, try to see if the other one overcooks it. Not like that, Kirsten!
Very close.
That was the overcooking that I mentioned.
Absolutely, and that will not have helped the rear tyres in any sense of the imagination to try and keep those cool. And yeah, he's lost a bit of time as well to Chris Bourne, so maybe slightly overdriving the car then, as we saw going through Maggots. And yeah, once again, he loses all that time he gained, all that time he worked hard for to get back onto Chris Bourne. He's lost it all over again. Van der Velde, though, 1.6 seconds separates himself and Khalil Atkins, so he's really doing well to size that gap down. I wonder if Khalil Atkins is doing a bit of tyre saving here to just try and keep his tyres in check for the end of the race, because that is when he's going to need them. He's going to have to try and hold off Van der Velde here for 2nd place.
Yeah, and, well, to be fair, he's constantly just yo-yoing around a little bit. So he lost half a second a couple sectors ago. Now he could put at least 2/10 on him again. But Atkins seems to be struggling quite a bit now with his Mercedes. And maybe, just maybe, the 720S is a little bit better suited to these current conditions.
Yeah, it could be as well. That could be a very good point. With just over 3.5 minutes left of this race then, as the 2 drivers battling for 2nd and 3rd negotiate their way now on through Aintree and onto the Wellington Straight, as that gap is now just over 1 second. So whatever Van der Velde is doing, it is working. Khalil Atkins has got to try and find a way to respond as they make their way now going in towards the left-hander at Brooklands. And yeah, that's going to be a very, very tasty battle for 2nd place for sure in the closing stages of this feature race here, the HyperX Open Series. as we see Sheldon Muscat making his way now through the penultimate corner onwards towards the start-finish straight. There's Ivaylo Boychev. We haven't seen a lot of him since the opening quarter of the race, but that's normally a good sign if you do that. 5th place so far for the Bulgarian. And yeah, a little bit of a race of his own. He's 8.9 behind Muscat, and he's 9.7 ahead of David Ohak. So it's just him against the elements at this moment in time. Kirsten Ebeyer, meanwhile, has another chance to try and get past Chris Bourne. He looks right on the back of him this time around, right on that rear diffuser, right on that rear wing. Is he going to try and find a way past as we make our way towards Stowe? He's going to have to go the long way round if he wants the move. Round the long way he goes. Oh, there's contact between the two of them. Ebeyer manages to keep that car moving in the right direction. What about Chris Bourne? He hasn't emerged in the picture yet.
He got spun there. Couldn't keep the car under control. Simply put, I think Ebeyer just closed the door a bit too quickly there. Now, of course, Chris Bourne has to stay out of the way for the battle for P2. But yeah, it's when you touch someone from the outside like that, I'd say, as we saw from Kirsten Ebeyer, because it's the rear just getting upset a little bit, you can correct that a bit better, but when the front just completely loses all grip, well, you're not going to countersteer that. You just lost all of the grip there. You just have to, well, pray. And sadly, praying wasn't enough there for Chris Bourne.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what the result of that is. Meanwhile, Carly Atkins and Tinko van der Velde battling away for 2nd place. There they are then as we join them. They make their way on towards Aintree now and on towards the Wellington Straight. Carly Atkins has got his hands full here to try and keep behind Tinko van der Velde. Van der Velde has been working hard to side this gap down, and over the last 5 minutes or so, he really has sided the gap down. Now he's trying to move around the outside, going in towards the last couple of corners, in through Luffield. We will go now through this long right-hander. You see 2 different lines being taken there. Tico van der Velde trying to prioritise the exit speed out of the corner, trying to find the apex wherever possible to try and find the move past. And we are on to the final lap of this race then, as started by Luke Whitehead, who's 20 seconds up the road of this battle here. They now make their way through Copse Corner for this final lap of the race. If Van der Velde's going to make it, he has to do it on this lap. He's closing in as they make their way towards Maggots here. Not normally an overtaking opportunity here, as Kirsten Ebeyer gets a 5-second penalty. That'll be added to the end of his race. Meanwhile then, Van der Velde has got to try and play the waiting game. He can't play it for too long, but going through Maggots and Beckett's, then through Chapel, not really an overtaking opportunity. He'll get a little bit of a tow then down the hanger straight from the Mercedes ahead. Khalil Atkins then will know he positioning here is so important, as we just saw that picture-in-picture then of Luke Whitehead making his way now through the halfway point of his final lap, making his way towards Abbey, but it looked mightily close between the 2 cars then of Khalil Atkins and Tinko van der Velde as they make their way through now these last few corners of the club section before the right-hander takes us on to the Hamilton Straight. And there is Luke Whitehead now making his way through the loop. Not long for him now to get back-to-back victories here in the HyperX Open Series, the 2nd event here at Silverstone. And this hour-long race, it's service normalised and resumed after the poor start he did have. He's recovered very well. Van der Velde looking for a move round the outside, putting that Mercedes under pressure. He'll have the outside line going through the loop now, and across to Aintree they will go. Is there contact made between the 2 of them? Atkins tries to shut the door. He does shut the door. Meanwhile then, we'll have the picture-in-picture, because there goes Luke Whitehead making his way towards the line to grab his 2nd race win of the night. Back-to-back victories and a dominant display. Another dominant display from Luke Whitehead. And we're going side by side then for 2nd place. Going through the last couple of corners. Both cars off the track then as Atkins tries to claw and cling on to 2nd place. Through Luffield we will go for the final time. I think Atkins is just going to have enough momentum to keep a hold of that 2nd place then. So Atkins holds on from Van der Velde in 3rd place. A great battle between the 2 of them there. Elbows out towards the end as they made their way through in towards the last couple of corners, especially at Brooklands there. Sheldon Muscat finishing in 4th place across the line in the Bentley. And Boychov then in 5th place, making his way through the last couple of corners. He'll be coming through Luffield now and onwards towards Woodcote in the FTS Racing Aston Martin to grab 5th place in this race. and a solid performance, a solid 3/4 of the race for him after an eventful first quarter. There's David Ohak, another driver who's had a very, very quiet race since the race start. Just kept himself to himself in the DJ Racing Bentley and gets a solid 6th place to end his day here in the HyperX Open Series. Alex Leaf then has, he has shown a good bit of pace. He's shown a good bit of consistency as well. And it just shows you to finish first you must finish. 7th place, strong showing from the Nissan of Alex Leaf, and the TP Sim Racing Nissan crosses the line to take 7th place. And Silver Pyramids then, the last driver at the moment on the lead lap of this race, making his way on towards the last couple of corners. That's Ashton Cox in 9th place, Kirsten Abeya in 10th, Chris Bourne in 11th place, Dean Vella in 12th, and Spet is still out there. He's actually going to be 2 laps down on the race leader by the time he comes to the start-finish line, and it's been an eventful day for him. But Luke Whitehead, Nico, it's been a dominant performance once again by that man there in the Ashtar racing car.
Yeah, absolutely astonishing. And, well, let me tell you this. In Silverstone, I mean, it's typical British weather, of course. And so I have no doubt that the British driver has quite a lot of experience with it. But still, to drive this pace this consistently in the GT3 car like the Ferrari, in rain, where downforce sometimes gets diminished by, puddles and everything, it has certainly been an impressive drive from him.
No doubt impressive, and won by over 20 seconds in that feature race of an hour long, and no one can dispute who will be the winner of this event of the HyperX Open Series. There's a load more tracks to come your way. Once a month, these HyperX Open Series, and the top 3 drivers from each event all get a lovely prize as provided by HyperX, the sponsor of the series. So it's fair to say I think Luke Whitehead's going to walk away with the best prize of them all.
Yeah, pretty much. And if you can keep up these performances, obviously, it's going to be quite interesting. But of course, we have to consider now, if he wants to get podiums next time around, he will have that penalty that you mentioned earlier.
Yes, the success penalty of 3 points per finish will be added to his, I should say added, taken away rather, would be the more accurate phrase of his point standing. So the stewards behind the scene will make sure the official results are finalised, and then we'll bring you our top 3 when the finalised results are made, and then we'll hopefully have a chat with some of the drivers as well of the top 3. Hopefully all of them, because they'll be able to tell us what those final few minutes were like in those changing conditions. We never saw the track get too greasy, we never saw it dry out enough, but we did see it dry out enough for drivers to really start struggling with those tyre temperatures.
Absolutely, and I think Dean Vella maybe just a little bit too quick on the trigger there. Maybe he was expecting it to go down to greasy, that's why he just got these new tyres, and sadly lost out in position then, and just kind of out-pokered himself there, so to say.
Yeah, and it was a gamble he might as well have taken. He wasn't going to lose anything from pitting in, and he just thought, why not? Let's see if we can gain something here. If it had come off for him, he would have been the fastest driver out on track, no doubt about it. But sometimes when you roll the dice, sometimes you don't get it go your way. So unfortunately for him, he thought he'd try it, just didn't work out. But a good battle at the end then, elbows out for that tussle for second place in the closing stages of the endurance race. We call it the endurance race, it's more like the feature race between Atkins and Van der Velde.
Absolutely, and I think, quite honestly, we've seen so many passes through, I think that, turn 16, just going onto the Wellington straight, just positioning their car on the inside there and doing that risky line over the inside curb, but it seemed to always work, and Atkins just knew that. So, just perfect block there. And, I would also wager to guess, lifting off the throttle a little bit just to make sure that the momentum that Van der Velde could get through turn 15, that got killed off a little bit. Even so, Van der Velde is still trying to look for the outside then in turn 17 through Brooklands, and just not quite able to make it stick there, with also a little bit help from Atkins driving very, very aggressively on the defense. So great defense up to the line from Atkins, but also great attack effort from Van der Velde.
Yeah, I have to say, Van der Velde in the last 10 minutes, he turned up the wick then. He seemed to unlock that car's potential in those changing conditions and really, really just worked at that gap. Managed to get it within, passing distance. And I reckon if he had one more lap at that, he could have given it a real good chance. He gave it a good fight on the final lap, but maybe the chance for him to get the overtake just came a little bit too late for him.
Yeah, absolutely, and quite honestly, I hadn't anticipated this kind of pace from him just before the pit stop window, because we saw him sliding around, just being a little bit out of touch with the car. But, you know, suddenly he just found his form again as soon as the pit stops were over. And, you know, he started getting more consistent again, getting faster again, and really working well with the car to just gain back that distance that he had lost through the spin earlier.
Absolutely. So we can confirm then the final standings for the second round of the HyperX Open Series. Kali Atkins will grab third place. He does get a success penalty, though, for getting a podium in the first event last time out. Tico van der Velde gets second place, and Luke Whitehead, surprise, surprise, scoring every single available point, will win the second round of the HyperX Open Series. So a huge congratulations to our top three, and hopefully we'll get a chance to chat to them. But a quick word from yourself, Nico. It's a strong top three, and all three of them have deserved their place at that top.
Absolutely, and well, all three of them actually were on the podium, just with a slightly different constellation in the second race. All three of them drove fantastically today, and I'd say all three of them just deserved every single point they got.
They did indeed, and of course for these drivers they might be thinking about the next event, and maybe you are too. That'll be Friday the 4th of June here in the HyperX Open Series, where that time around we'll be going to the Nürburgring to let the drivers loose and see who will be first of the finishers and who will be able to get those prizes as offered by HyperX. We'll hopefully have a chance to chat to some of the drivers at the very least. In the meantime, Nico, we've had quite a few. We had a very eventful sprint race, if I can get my words out. But there were somehow more instances in the feature race.
Yeah, quite indeed. And we could say, you know, we didn't just have double the race length, we also had double the action. And yeah, just really impressive stuff. We also have, I think, a spokesperson, so to say. Sore throat. So Kali Atkins gave it more than his all, not just on track but also in the car. And I can absolutely understand that, you know, when you're in the car there, to just vent a bit of the stress maybe that you have, or just vent a little bit of the excitement that you have, you know. You also get very vocal about it in the car.
It could be that. It might just be that he just genuinely has a sore throat. But let's see if we can have a chance to talk to third place of the HyperX Open Series in Kali Atkins. I believe Vishal Patel is going to be speaking on his behalf. But Kali, if you can hear us, give us like a mute and an unmute if you can hear us there. That'd be a best way of seeing that one. But okay, so he can hear us. Good stuff. Good sign there. So Kali, third place in the HyperX Open Series. Of course, you took that success penalty to take you to third place. But I mean, talk us through that one. Heavy rain at Silverstone, drying up towards the end of the feature. How do you think you did?
Yeah, Kali's just messaged me through his words. Well, going into today, he didn't have a lot of time as he's had other commitments outside of esports. But he felt like he did quite well, given the circumstances. I mean, P2, P3, or the podium was a lot better than what expected. The team obviously worked very hard, much appreciated to them. Trying to get a step up was quite tough around here in the wet especially. And yeah, I mean, he's done a great job today. And yeah, the whole team are proud of him.
And so they should be. And towards the end of the feature race, it did look like Tico van der Velde had the pace on you, Kali. Can you just talk us through the last sort of 10 minutes in that race? Did the weather drying up have an effect on your pace at the end there?
Well, for him, I think the main issue was, you know, trying to manage the heating of the tyres, pressures, stuff like that. But I think he kept his head cool, you know, clearly showed his iron, trying to fend off third place near the end, got very close. But definitely was a race where he had to keep his head cool.
Yeah, it definitely looked like it as well, and to maybe blow off some steam with that rain as well. But just a final word on that battle between yourself and Van der Velde. Elbows out multiple occasions, but a good battle nonetheless. How do you feel after that one?
Well, we kind of saw how he felt when he was screaming, you know, coming across the line. That's probably where he lost his voice, but yeah.
So Nico was
He
right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, great stuff. Well, I'll just take the opportunity to throw the floor over to Carly to thank any sponsors, anyone he'd like to shout out. Hopefully there will be someone to shout out for him. He has been doing a lot of shouting today.
Okay. Yeah. All right. He's just told me. So he wants to thank PC Boys Omega. He wants to thank his dad, and also Vanatech for the wheels. Tim Blacksmith, his uncle. Yeah, very good support behind him.
Great stuff. Well, Carly, it's been a pleasure to chat with you, or rather chat at you. And thank you, Vishal, for helping out with the sore throat there. It's been a pleasure to talk to you both, and congratulations on third place. Some good HyperX goodies coming your way. And we'll see now second place in the standings with Tinko van der Velde. Nico, I believe you've got him there.
Right, Tinko, great races from you today. Definitely a new face around these parts, but a very well-known face already around the esports area in, of course, other series. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. It was a really tough race, but it was enjoyable. I was a bit unlucky, I got spun around, and then I focused and tried to come back and tried to attack P2, and it was very close. I almost had him.
Yeah, definitely a great recovery drive in the feature race. In the sprint race, also quite a lot of action, but got through Calais a bit earlier there. Did you think you were in a bit better form there in comparison to the feature?
No, I think it was quite similar pace.
Right, then overall also, of course, we had this ever so lighter getting rain, just constantly heating up tires. Did you have any challenge with that after the pit stop?
Yeah, they began to heat up, so I had to cool them, driving on the right or left on the track where the water was still there, to cool them down, and it helped a bit to catch P2.
But overall, not too big of a challenge, obviously, because of that last attack still being rather vicious, and I'm pretty sure that Kalai still had to put a lot of, well, if not all of it, into the defense. But Tinko, any shoutouts you want to do?
No.
Short
Right.
and sweet, I like it.
Yeah, short and sweet. Back to you, Kieran.
Well, thank you very much, Tico. Enjoy your second place and enjoy the goodies from HyperX coming your way for that deserved second place. And that leaves now for the winner of the HyperX Open Series second event here at Silverstone. There wasn't a point he didn't score in this one. It's Luke Whitehead. Luke, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Luke, I'm struggling to find a word other than dominant to describe the pace you had today. 7/10 ahead in qualifying. You had a 12-second lead at the end of the sprint race, over 20 seconds over the endurance race. A pretty solid day for your standards.
Definitely not a bad day in the office. No, definitely not. I'm a little bit shocked, to be honest, because I've never driven that car around that track in the wet previous to about 20 minutes before the race. So I was very unaware of how my pace would be. And to be honest, I knew I had a good setup because I did the sim grid race yesterday, Sprint Cup, and the pace in the wet was really good. And yeah, I mean, I always like the rain. I like Silverstone in the rain. I actually prefer it to it in the dry. So I was quite relieved when they started the service up and it was absolutely bucketing down with rain. So I knew I'd be in decent stead. I just didn't know what my pace would be like on full race fuel. And I wasn't on full race fuel in race 2. I fueled half and half because I knew the rain was getting lighter, and I didn't want to repeat of yesterday's race where it would dry out, I'd pit on wets, and then it would go slick tire weather. So I was a little bit worried about that. It didn't really it didn't really make a difference in the end, but yeah, I honestly couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier at all.
And at the end of the feature race, then obviously we've spoken to Kali and Tinko about how the track was starting to dry. How difficult was the challenge to try and keep your tyres in check, especially tyre temperatures?
Well, I didn't. I surprisingly enough, I was quite surprised that I found that they were completely fine. Like my tyres weren't anywhere near to overheating; they were still in a good range. Because prior to the race, I knew that it would get lighter at rain. Because at the previous race, it was I think about a second and a half quicker than what it was at the start. So I knew that that pace of the track would carry over into the next race. So I reduced my pressures a little bit before the race and opened my brake ducts because obviously I wasn't sure how dry it would get. Because obviously if it gets dry but not dry enough to go to slicks, then I'd have to use wets and that would get them very hot. So I took a few precautions before the race and it paid off, you know. And I was a little bit worried at the start because obviously I didn't know what fuel the other guys were on. I didn't know what pressures the other guys were on. And obviously at the start my my game sort of lagged a little bit. I had a screen freeze just as the lights went out and lost a lot of time. So that set me back and I was worried a little bit. But yeah, in the end, the pace was good enough just to keep ahead. And I was very, very thankful for that.
Well, Luke, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. The floor is yours for any shout-outs, any sponsors you'd like to thank.
So first of all, I'd like to thank H3 Racing as always for all their help and all their support. You know, they've been absolutely amazing, giving me loads of opportunities to take part in different races with them. And in some respects help with the setups. You know, the setup was worked on collaboratively by myself, Hamadra Kesey and Ashton Cox. You know, all three of us worked on that wet setup and it seems to be working really well. I'd like to say a massive thank you to my manager Robert Wollaston as well for giving me advice. Obviously after a tough couple of races I've had over the past month or so, he's been sort of a really good pick-me-up, giving me advice on how to move forward, and that's been a massive help. I cannot understate that. Thank you to my mum and dad. My mum's watching from her hospital bed after her operation. All my love goes out to her as always. Hope she's doing better. Thank you to everyone else who's watching as well. And I hope you enjoyed the race. I hope you enjoyed it.
Well, we certainly did with those changeable conditions. Luke, congratulations on winning the second event of the HyperX Open Series. Some HyperX goodies coming your way. Enjoy them. You've earned them.
I certainly will. I've been looking forward to them.
Well, thank you very much, Luke. It's been a pleasure to talk to you as always, and good luck in your future endeavours. I'm sure we'll see you back here and soon.
Thank you. You too. Pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
So, Nico, then it leaves us to try and wrap up this stream then, and wherever you're watching, it's been great to bring this to you. So a very eventful sprint race, an even more eventful feature race, which ended up with only 13 drivers, but that was more to the story about how to manage your tyres towards the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, to be fair, I think we lost a few more drivers in the feature race than I'd anticipated, but then again, when you're constantly just racing in the rain, when you're racing for long periods of time in the rain, but always in this sort of sprint format, you're constantly pushing on the limit and accidents will happen. So, I'm just hoping that no one of the drivers got discouraged for any future races, and I hope that they will be driving with us again, and I know they will, of course. But I'm looking forward to the next race, of course. It's been great action as always here at World Pro Racing, and maybe next time we'll have a couple more fights as well when it's a little bit more dry again.
Absolutely, and British weather doesn't always go our way. It always throws a bit of rain here and there. But the next event of the series will be at the Nürburgring in June, so hopefully you can join us for that one. The next rounds can all be found at worldproracing.com/events, and they'll be open if you want to try your hand at a couple of events as well. We've got the Alpine GT4 Championship on R Factor 2 that starts on Wednesday the 12th of May. We've also got the AMD GT4 Championship starting on the Thursday the 13th of May, and we've also got the return of the ACC Sprint Series Season number 3. Round number 1 starts on Friday the 14th of May in exactly a week's time. So hopefully you'll be looking forward to that. We certainly are. So it will be great to see you there at World Pro Racing. A huge thank you to our sponsors then in HyperX for sponsoring this Open Series. We hope you've enjoyed this one, as well as AMD, GT Omega Racing, Thrustmaster, Gaming Malta and visitmalta.com. From the team behind the scenes as well, thank you to our stewing team in Adrian Figallo and George Muscat. They had a busy evening tonight. They kept well on top of it, so a huge thank you to them. And of course our men behind the cameras and the broadcasting director Justin Mifsud, and the birthday boy, Nathan Mifsud, as well. From myself, Kieran McGinley, and from Nicholas Hillebrand alongside, it's been a pleasure to bring these races to you. And that was it for World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real. We'll hopefully see you very soon. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and have a very good evening.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
It's just so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.